It feels like we're big, but equally, compared to the biggest, there's an old joke that we make less gin than DIAGEO spills in a year. And that probably, could be true. I read a book about setting up a restaurant, and they told you, they give you 3 financial metrics that if any of these are over a certain percentage of your turnover, such as rent, then it's a red flag. And I think pretty much everyone in my model was a red flag. I didn't really know much about marketing or brand as such back then. Maybe I was a little bit naive. I don't know if that worked as a strength or as a weakness, but for me, I dove into the product and the process itself. So I knew I wanted to make this gin. I knew I wanted to make it myself, so I needed to learn how to do it. And so I was always going to do from start to finish production and bottling myself.
From that day, 30th of July to 30th of July the next year, 2014, how do you make 300 grand?
So I think I knew I wasn't necessarily going to be the world's best salesperson. That definitely wasn't my forte. And I knew that I wanted to be able to create something that I would feel really proud about and passionate about. And then hopefully the sales would click into place and come naturally. I think what's interesting about us or our company or our brands is more the journey. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily some marketing or business mastermind behind our success, or not necessarily analysed in a really intelligent way as to what exactly we've done. I have a sort of a mix of a bit of timing, a bit of luck, and doing some things quite well. But I think what is probably interesting is the kind of the story or the journey, or how, I guess, when I was 23, like a 24-year-old setting up this company to actually be, we're not huge, but
what size are you at now?
About 10 million in sales, roughly.
That's fucking still massive.
Yeah, so big for a small company. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's an aspiration. I'd never even had 10 million on my business plan. Yeah, never had 10 million on my business plan for the first 5 years, and it feels like we're big, but equally, compared to the biggest, we're still, this is that joke, there's an old joke that we make less gin than DIAGEO spills in a year. And that probably, could be true. And it's kind of, yeah.
But yeah, there's loads in that, because it's like, what are you measuring yourself against? Because so many people I speak to, so Libby, who did Piper Investments, don't you know Piper? She's basically saying most brands get stuck at 5 to 6 million. Yeah. And you've soared straight past that. Like you have kind of the £1 million mark, the 5. So but if you're measuring yourself against a Diageo, then obviously it seems like you're miles off. If you measure yourself against it's interesting, because you're basically comparing yourself to a Premier League team, when in reality, every challenger brand is probably a League 3 team. Yeah. Every challenger brand. Like I'm talking, even like the big ones like yourself. Mm-hmm. So you're probably winning that league. But if you put yourself in the Champions League, i.e. against Diageo, then you're
a minnow. Yeah. Exactly.
But there's a whole point of that. So I mean, I'm good to jump in, mate. So we kind of just roll straight in.
Yes.
So where I want to start is I was driving down to the Gurnard's Head.
Gurnard's Head, awesome.
And there's, for listeners, I recommend kind of Googling it, but yesterday in Cornwall there was kind of torrential biblical rain slashing down. I was driving down one of those long kind of winding country roads, cows to the left, sheep to the right. And then you've got this kind of yellow honey coloured pub in the middle of this kind of verdant vista.
Yes.
It's the best way to describe it. And then you've got the kind of just the ominous yet kind of beautifully alluring Atlantic Ocean that's just spewing at you. It really pulls you. And as I was driving along, I was thinking about our podcast today, and I was thinking, God, there's actually a lot of parallels between kind of the Cornish coastline and the founder's journey, which we will interweave into our conversation today. But the Gurnard's Head was your first stockist.
Yes.
Take me to the feeling in your tummy or your stomach as you're driving along those winding country roads with Tarquins, your first bottles in the back of the car, and you're driving towards the Atlantic Ocean, which is both kind of terrifying yet incredibly exciting. Yeah, talk to me about that feeling. And what was the first thing you said to the people at the Governor's Head?
It's a good, so it's almost 11 years ago now. That was the 30th of July, 2013. It was sort of the culmination of a 12-month startup period where I effectively taught myself how to make gin on my cooker at home. And during this planning phase of setting up what we were the first distillery or gin distillery in Cornwall for over 100 years, or the southwest of England. I sort of started my business plan. So, I did GCSE business studies back in the day, and, the first thing to do, you've got to write a business plan if you're going to start a business. And this involved reaching out to potential customers, potential suppliers. I dropped an email to the lovely brothers of who are the owners behind the Governor's Head, Charles and Edmund Inkin. And they were super enthusiastic. I said I was going to make a new gin in Cornwall. Would they be interested in buying some? And they said they would. They'd be delighted to stock it. And they were actually very persistent. So they kept on asking me during the startup journey, "Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet?" And so it got to the point of about. As I was trying to develop it and make sure the recipe was absolutely perfect, I had them breathing down my neck, and I had this sort of sense of urgency that I needed to deliver this gin in time for the summer season. July the 30th. We were almost into August. Those peak 8-10 weeks were almost over. So I scaled up eventually from my cooker to a 500 square foot, best described as a converted cowshed, to sort of slightly more industrial premises on a farm estate just 10 minutes outside Padstow. Scaled up to it's about 250 litres in size, 250 litre still. Produced 220 bottles in that first batch. In fact, 6 first batches were write-offs. This was my developing or scale-up process from changing that tiny little recipe, which I made in a 0.7 litre still on my cooker, to a commercial recipe. And on the 7th, we were in business. So, I tasted it. Tasted fantastic. Tasted delicious. Everything I've been dreaming of for the past 12 months on my startup journey. With help of my older sister and business partner. We're a family distillery, first generation family distillery. We corked the bottles, labelled the bottles, waxed them, load them up into the back of my Vauxhall Astra estate, which was my very sensible compromise of not getting a van yet. I remember I was dreaming during the startup phase of driving around in a van, but they only had 2 seats. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get the halfway house, a used estate car. I can fit, quite a decent amount of gin in the back of it. I've got 5 seats, yada, yada, yada. So loaded it up. They'd been hassling me, so I drove down there. It's actually almost quite a big county, so you can drive from east to west, or even central north where we are to the Governor's Head. It's a good 45 minutes, possibly an hour on a busy summer's day, which it was. And as you said, it's this beautiful part, even more wild than the wild coast of Cornwall. So it is a beautiful drive, and it is, cows come up into the garden they actually walk up along the road to the front of the pub. And I remember when I started the distillery or started the brand, I knew I wasn't necessarily going to be the world's best salesperson. That definitely wasn't my forte. And I knew that I wanted to be able to, when I decided that I would love to make spirits, and in particular gin, I'd love to be able to create something that I would feel really proud about and passionate about. And then hopefully the sales would click into place and come naturally. It'd be a lot easier to sell something that, I was so passionate about and could talk for hours and end on. Hopefully that bit would be easy. And I wouldn't say it's easy, but it definitely felt natural. So, driving up, definitely a mixture of nervousness and a mixture of excitement. And I got there, and they were well prepared. And there was the whole staff, not only of the Governor's Head, but I believe the Old Coast Guard Hotel as well, which was their second venue, and they were waiting for their tasting, sat around a large table waiting to be poured, waiting for something that they'd probably done dozens of times with much more professional outfits than us. We're ready for their tasting, ready for their signature serve, as they call it in the trade, a little bit of history, background, and maybe, the kind of standard format.
Sorry, format. Signature serve, what do you mean by that?
Like a cocktail, how do you serve your gin and tonic? What garnish would you sell it? Or if you had a cocktail in mind, what would that be that would pop onto the menu? You know, what is the best way to drink a Tarquins?
Yeah.
So these are all things that I've learned over the last decade of how the tasting should have gone. But really, what I explained was my journey into how I made it, what went into it in terms of ingredients, and what I was doing there today. And, you know, we taste it neat, you try it with a splash of tonic. How to be garnished. We love a slice of pink grapefruit and a sprig of fresh thyme, and that was it. It's a little bit of a blur. I was quite shocked that there were so many people that I was going to talk to. I thought I thought it was almost going to be transactional, and I was getting there, sell a couple of cases of gin, thanks very much, and I'm off to the next. But no, it was more of a substantial event, and it was that. You know, it was part of the learning process for me of how you start to sell a brand and how you hopefully try and build it and build those advocates and ultimately try and win those lifelong customers of Tarquins. And you know, knowledge is power. I had worked prior to setting up the distillery between an office job in London and the distillery in Cornwall. I worked in a pub called the Bull Castle in Notting Hill. I was.
Is that the one that's behind as you come out Notting Hill Gate, on the left?
Not that one. So that's the Windsor Castle with the hanging gardens. This is on Ledbury Road. It's kind of just off Portobello. Yeah. It's But this, I can rewind. The reason I was working there is before I had the spark in my eye to make gin. I'd actually left my desk job in London to set up a quick service Thai restaurant chain. So I've rewinded back a little bit in the story.
We jump around. So
jump around. Okay, so even rewinding further back than that. I mean, before university, I did a cordon bleu cooking course. So always being very interested in food.
Just for listeners, cordon bleu. That's like a.
It's like a French-based sort of cookery school, effectively. The classic one is in Paris, but they got locations all over the world, and the one I went to was in London. It wasn't like Le Grand Diplôme, where you do a 2-year effective, like a degree, where you're doing an apprenticeship in fine French cuisine. I did it was a month's course, very much the essentials of the classics, but it was very much following an enthusiasm I had for food. Hadn't yet blossomed into drink yet because I was still only 18 and, I can't say I was sophisticated in that department. But I then used it as very much almost like a qualification to go and be a chalet host, which is where you go and cook in a chalet in France for loads of people, typically for a British company where they go skiing. So you might cook breakfast, afternoon tea and dinner for, say, 8 people, maybe a 3-course meal, and you kind of hone and perfect your skills of cookery. So I was really interested in food. After university, where I studied much more conventionally economics and politics, went to Bristol and I left to move to London like lots of my friends did. And I took a job which was very much an extension of my degree, which I was still also very interested in economics and politics, where I wrote... it's called an emerging markets analyst. I used to write economic, political, and financial market research on Latin American economies or countries. So Venezuela and Colombia were my specialties. But I knew, even though I was enthusiastic about the content of what I was doing, I knew that this wasn't the job for me for the next 50 years. This wasn't where I saw myself necessarily really developing. And what I was really passionate about working in this effectively 8 till 5 desk job was that 1 hour break that I got in for lunch, effectively, where I used to potter around of London, work quite near Fleet Street, quite near St Paul's, and I used to pop out to the best up and coming kind of quick service lunchtime spots. So places like Lyon when they were up and running. Pod was going there. The whole landscape's changed today, but what I was really passionate at that time was Thai food. So my idea, I couldn't get, prices have changed over the last decade, you couldn't get a £5 pad Thai, which was quick service. You could sit down for a meal, get a £10 pad Thai, but there wasn't that opportunity to get something grab and go, and Thai was so popular. It's one of those cultures and cuisines, and everything about that country has sort of been exported pretty, the growth has grown pretty significantly and was really popular, and I thought that would be an amazing idea. I would eat it. I'm sure thousands of others of people would eat it. So I actually left that job after a year to make sure it was the right decision. Left that job and took the job in the pub in the Walmer Castle, which was one of those fusion pubs which served British food and Thai food. So there was method in this madness of this move, and the idea was to learn the ropes of hospitality, learn a bit more about the Thai food. So it was a whole Thai team in the kitchen that I'd sit and have that family style meal with in between shifts. And write the business plan. So we know about my love for a business plan, and I would literally spend time outside like competitors in theory, like Wasabi, even some Pret a Manger's doing footfall counts. I'd have one of those clickers and click people in and out between the hours of 12 till 2. And I spent 6 months doing this and working there, and got to the end of my business plan and realized that setting up a restaurant in London, I read a book about setting up a restaurant, and they told you, they give you 3 financial metrics that if any of these are over a certain percentage of your turnover, such as rent or wages, then it's a red flag. And I think pretty much everyone in my model was a red flag. It's very difficult to set up a restaurant in London. You need to be extraordinarily busy to really make a success of it. And even then you're on a knife edge. So I didn't have big deep pockets either.
The Thai in a pub thing, I think is one of life's brilliant, delicious quirks. There's a pub by where a family home in Oxshott in Surrey, and called the Vic, which used to be an old school boozer, like low ceilings. You have the landlord, it's like a corpulent bugger just drinking Guinness all day, but they had Thai food, so it's like an old school pub, but the Thai food in there was just
amazing.
Well, just like sort of face melting delicious. And I think I was interviewed Ossian Rogers, who's the founder of the Devonshire. I don't know if you in London, which is this new pub. It's amazing.
Awesome. I haven't been yet, but it's the hottest ticket. It's difficult to get a res.
Difficult to get a reservation, but the podcast goes live next week. He's genius. He talks about storytelling and everything. But I think you don't really see it as often anymore. The Thai in the pub. What did the Thai team in the pub teach you about life and food? Because I think you literally you can learn from everyone and anyone. Like when I used to live with cheese around London for Harvey and Brockless. And actually some of the interactions I'd have with different staff members and stuff were some of the biggest lessons. What did that teach you?
It was. I suppose it was like any restaurant, a bit of front and back of house. So front of house, I did have a Thai colleague, and she was lovely. And working front of house, I thought it was such a change from working in quite a buttoned up office job. You could be yourself and you're relaxed and have normal conversations. If you were feeling hungover, you could tell them, and you wouldn't, not get promoted the next year. And it felt like a huge weight and relief off my shoulders. And really actually love working there. It seems silly I hadn't worked in a pub before, and it was fantastic. And then, as I said, we had these family style meals. So all the chefs were Thai, and so you'd sit round between a split shift or a double shift, and they'd cook. They would take. They'd obviously make it economical, but they would chop the heads off the fish that they serve, and they'd take quite a deep cut, so you get more of the fillet. But they'd make these amazing non-menu dishes, really traditional Thai ones, like larb salads and lots of regional dishes that they were depending on where they were from. And it was amazing, and they're really very relaxed, beautifully friendly people, and it is very much family. You call them uncle or auntie, or similar names, and it was just a fantastic place to work, and it felt a really lovely community. And they got wind that I was setting up this restaurant. Some of them were like, I tell you what, mate, I could be your head chef, and I thought it was a bit of luck that I ended up working there. But if I'd followed through to doing the restaurant, which is probably a wise idea that I did it, I had an instant foundation of a network to rely on and try and make sure the thing would have been a bit of a success. But it was a super cool experience, and it really helped me learn so many different aspects of what I brought into my next role as an entrepreneur. It was a company founder, that customer service, attention to detail, just making sure you're a bit of a problem solver as well, dealing with the general public, dealing with customers. And at the same time, that's when I received, really helped the spark towards setting up a distillery or a drinks brand. So we had this wine training, kind of run-of-the-mill wine training that you get from your supplier.
So So this whilst you're at the boot.
Whilst I was there, yeah. So we had this wine training. It was, naturally, if you're, naturally quite inquisitive about what I'm working with. So I hadn't worked behind a bar before. I'd always been interested in food, but started drinking beer. I liked beer. Wasn't hugely into it, but start to learn the differences between what it. I tried Guinness properly and actually liked it because I'd never really wanted to order one before. You clean the pipes, you try everything, which was fantastic. You do the same with the wine, and you get to try them all, so you can have that power of knowledge. And this is where I learned that, as a bar person, I'm not going to recommend a wine that I know nothing about, and this is exactly the same case with spirits and wine. So, by sitting through that wine training and learning about the nuances between each wine, or not even nuances, just the difference, the clear differences between some of the regions or countries or grapes or varieties, suddenly you feel empowered to really, talk about it with your customers. So if they ask you, I would love a white wine, you can say with confidence, with a smile on your face, why you should order the white Rioja and why it's so delicious, because it's your favorite. And, 9 times out of 10, they're going to go with your recommendation. So it was very much helpful in that respect, but also, I love a physical product being something you're able to touch and taste. So when I got to the end of this business plan for the Thai restaurant and realized the numbers didn't stack up, it would have been, pretty difficult to get off the ground. I needed sort of inspiration to do something else, and I'd always been, interested in food, and it felt very natural to make that pivot over into drink as well. I'm from the West Country originally, so we have all sorts of craft ciders. I say craft. They used to sell, before they clamped down, cider and milk cartons on the side of the road. Through an honesty box you can do when you drive through Devon and Somerset. We've had the real ale boom, or ultimately probably craft ale. Since the 1980s, we've been making small batch ales and really high quality, and something that we've been proud of. But when it came to spirits, so I'd had wine training, I'd been working with the beers and the ciders. The spirits was very much a different domain. It was very much I loved learning, and it was a discovery process for me to learn that the majority of the back bar or the products that we sold were owned by about 3 companies. That over the last 40 years, there'd been huge consolidation, with brands getting snapped up by the big boys. And even sort of a local brand to us, Plymouth Gin down in the southwest, I'm originally from the West Country, that was owned by Pernod Ricard, the French multinational. I just had no idea, So I thought it was fascinating, and I began to read about, very much at the time, it was the craft whiskey boom in the States. So maybe America's about a decade ahead of us in lots of these things. And they are maybe, gin isn't big in America, whiskey is big. That's probably one of their largest spirits outside vodka. And they began to make that. Hundreds of distilleries began to pop up on a micro scale and make whiskey. And in England, that had transferred over to gin. We're very much a gin country, and
why isn't America a big gin country? I don't get that. That's because I just find the similarities and differences between us and the States just crazy. Well, yeah, why do you think that is?
It is a good question. I think now they're showing signs that they're getting into it. The market for gin is growing, but it's probably one of the smallest categories of the big ones in the States. It was a maturing market, so it's ultimately, I suppose, lots of spirits are cyclical. Gin maybe was big in the States 30, 40 years ago. It's got a great naval heritage. Big on New England.
What do you mean naval heritage?
I think
they used to drink it in the Navy.
They used to drink gin with the Navy, yeah, and also it's got that kind of, Plymouth gin is all about the founding fathers and it going over to New England, and it's got that coastal element. Sorry to interrupt.
So Plymouth gin's not Plymouth UK gin.
It is Plymouth UK, yeah, but the founding fathers set off from Plymouth, I believe.
Is that why it's big? Yeah, because I thought. No, I don't mean this. This sounds like an absolute dickhead, but Plymouth's not the most gorgeous of places in the world. There's not more romanticism to Plymouth. Well, I didn't think so because I didn't. Then I realised how big Plymouth is.
It's big, yeah. I mean,
as a brand, but I didn't realise it was
as the brand. Yeah, it's the brand. It's one of the classic ones. So it's a unique start. It's been made for hundreds of years in Plymouth. The distillery still exists in the Barbican in the old town, effectively. But the Pilgrims or founding fathers of America set off from Plymouth. So it's got that heritage.
That's why the States.
It's kind of, I suppose so. It has that legacy, and lots of these legacy brands perform quite well in the States. But it was very much maturing drinker. They've been drinking gin for a long time. And it's really what we're seeing in the last few years is new drinkers getting into the category with the cocktail culture, with the sort of emergence of some of the celebrity brands and really bringing it into sort of popular culture. But yeah, gin in the UK is definitely a little bit more as a proportion of the share of market, more popular than the States. But the way that craft spirits boom had translated from across the Atlantic was very much into gin. So I was inspired by the guys like Sacred Gin up in Highgate and Sipsmith as well down in Chiswick. And they started around 2008, 2009, similar time to each other. And they had started to make gin on a small scale. And what they did is pave the way to for people to realize that was physically and legally possible. So we knew that the market had sort of condensed into just a few players. And I genuinely think that the people didn't know that you could make gin or spirits on a small scale legally and feasibly. And what they did, I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. It's like you could make small batch spirits, which sounded absolutely incredible. You can do it in your house. The guy, Ian at Heart at Sacred, was making gin at his house. And I was like, wow, how incredible. And he had a commercially viable product that he was selling in some of the best bars and hotels in the world. He was exporting, he was in Fortnum and Masons. And I was like, oh my God, I had a dream of making my own product. I thought, this is it. This is what I would love to spend the next 5, 10, 20 years doing. And that's literally what I did. I love researching. So I didn't have a big budget. Effectively, I had some inheritance, which I ring-fenced. I had £50,000 to set up my business. It was very clear that £50,000 doesn't set you up a quick service Thai restaurant chain in London. But it could, if I played my cards right and was quite frugal with how I set up this distillery, I could bring a brand to market to make gin. And that's pretty much what I spent.
So how did you spend the 50k? Because a lot of people want to set up. I mean, there's a gazillion different paths here, right? But like you can either go and set up your own factory, distillery, which is one path, or you can kind of just use a third party. But people who may want to be setting it up may think they need a gazillion K. How did you spend the 50k?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my motivation for setting up the gin. So I love the idea of creating something unique. Was obsessed with I don't know how much everyone knows about gin, but as long as you add juniper, you can add anything you want to make your own complete unique recipe.
Why juniper? What is that?
Juniper is it's this technically a pine cone, but it is the flavor of gin. It's piney, it's resinous, it's really oily, it's got that fantastic scent on, both on the nose and on the palate, and it's bitter, and it blends beautifully well with tonic, as we know. But as long as you've got that ingredient, you can add absolutely anything you want in to make your own recipe. So that's what appealed to me about it. And so I set out on the journey to make the gin, and so I basically didn't have the budget for a consultant, so that would probably be the first thing you do. You get a consultant to learn how to make it. But equally, I didn't go down the third-party route to contract it out. What appealed to me to make gin was to actually dive into the product, to make it myself. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make this flavor myself. I wanted to make it unique. I wanted to get that perfect balance between those juniper notes, the florals, the spice, the earthiness, the herbaceousness, and create my own unique recipe that I would feel very proud to sell. It wasn't, I didn't really know much about marketing or brand as such back then. Maybe I was a little bit naive. I don't know if that worked in my, as a strength or as a weakness. But for me, I dove into the product and the process itself. So I knew I wanted to make this gin. I knew I wanted to make it myself. So I needed to learn how to do it. And so I was always going to do from start to finish production and bottling myself. There wasn't really any other way that I knew, or I didn't even, I didn't explore for someone else to make it, because that wasn't got me excited. I wasn't a professional marketer. I couldn't tell you, I didn't know the best practice of making or launching a brand. That wasn't my expertise, but I knew I had the passion to make something which I hoped could be a little bit better. I wasn't shooting for the moon, but if I gave it the right care and attention to detail that lots of these real ale brewers and cider makers have done, provincially or regionally in Cornwall and in Devon and Somerset in the West Country, if I could do the same with gin, make it taste better than the household name or in the green bottle that everyone else has, I might be onto something, and I could convert people maybe one at a time that they should, give my gin a try, and hopefully convert them for a bit of an upsell. So that was very much my premise at the beginning.
Yeah, so just going back to the 50K, how did
it break down? Yeah. So I found. So I left London and moved back to the West Country, and the idea for me was to live by the sea, and I think on paper it was to go surfing in the morning and make a few bottles of gin in the afternoon. But the fantastic things about living in Cornwall is we've got Falmouth University. So first off, that was one of the best graphic design and art degree universities in the country. So it's a hotbed of creative agencies. So I found some guys who were similar age to me, about 24, 25 when I was starting up. And they were happy to do my whole branding, website design, bottle packaging, the whole works, like 100-gram package for a few grand.
Is that still the branding today?
We have refreshed our branding since. The agency is still going, and they're going from strength to strength, from Kingdom and Sparrow. And it was very much, for them, probably building out their portfolio a bit. For me, getting something which was an extraordinarily fantastic value. The amount of hours and time and effort they put into this. I was getting way more bang for my buck. So I had this awesome creative agency, really enthusiastic guys, and basically they did that marketing front. Including website for that, so super cheap. My still, so I've been eyeing up, which is the copper pot still that you used to make the gin. I've been eyeing up the one that Sipsmith had used, but it was close to 100 grand. That was twice what I had, so I had to be more creative, and I found these beautiful hand beaten copper pot stills from Portugal. They were a couple grand. So here we are, a few grand for my branding, a few grand for my still, maybe some auxiliary equipment. I needed a 200-pound bottle filler and filter. I needed some tanks, another £1,000. But ultimately on equipment, less than, I'm sure, equipment and branding probably less than 10 grand. Then I just get it. The rest really goes into stock. So, you've got to buy your first pallets of bottles, first labels, juniper, alcohol, and then the rest is working capital. So, from that, it sounds bizarre. And I think obviously prices have gone up over the last 11, 12 years. The rest of it is obviously labor.
When you say working capital, that's just running
it. Yeah. So you have to sell on credit. So even those first customers, I was giving credit to. Some lovely ones would pay me the day I delivered it, or they'd write me a check because they felt sorry for me. Maybe this young kid selling them some gin, and they had great empathy for me trying to build this business, and then they'd write me a check on the spot, and I'd go and cash it. But really, no, I was offering credit, so 28 days credit off the bat. And within that, I don't know how I made it work. So I wasn't necessarily paying myself a salary off the bat. I did by the end of year one, and I didn't pay my sister off the bat as well. So that's where we had huge savings in terms of, that would have been the majority of the cost of the business. But I managed to make that, we've managed to make that £50,000 last to today and hopefully beyond, genuinely. So we've never taken any investment. So we're still, I say, this first generation family business. And we managed to start turning a profit, fairly quickly. And ultimately we're working from our rent was £300 a month, right? We're in a 500 square foot unit just outside Padstow. So we hadn't gone the full bells and whistles. I was really focused on the production and trying to make the product absolutely delicious, but very much working from this low overhead base. And, I knew I had £50,000 and that was my one shot. It was either, use it to put a deposit on a house or try and make the best success of this sort of crazy idea to set up a gin distillery. And I was working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, very much determined to make this work. And I think this, we've got to rewind back to, this is 2013. And and probably, gin was beginning to take off. I think I was very incredibly fortunate in terms of timing, as probably the next year or two it kind of just exploded. But I think I was extraordinarily lucky. We'd make about 220 bottles in a batch. I'd load it up into my car. I'd sell it to sort of local wine shops, farm shops, lovely bars, independent hotels and restaurants. Learnt then that you could use FedEx, use a courier to start shipping out orders. Learnt that what a pallet was literally, and that you can send stock via pallets and it gets taken by a haulier. But it was very rustic. This was not a sophisticated operation. I was using carbon copy receipts. I don't know if you can even remember those. You take it to an account, they sign their signature. It was all written by hand. You tear it off, give them a copy, and we keep one. And then, at the end of the week, I'd convert these into invoices and send them out. You have that disastrous moment where you've lost one of the carbon copy books. It's got, 10 grand's worth of orders. Where is it? Mm-hmm. Finally dig it up under a folder. But it was honestly very rustic. And we'd do events pre-card machines. It was all cash. You're counting up money, you're going down to the bank, cashing it in and popping it in. But effectively, we've grown very much organically over the last 10, 11 years. And those days, the margins are pretty much similar to most food and drink, modest-ish, probably 40% gross margin on a duty paid or a finished bottle of gin, or 33% sometimes. So what you're effectively doing is very, very slowly trying to turn £2 into £3, and doing that consistently from the financial perspective of it. And then what we did, or what I did with my sister, is very much reinvest all of our profits into building the business. And that's what we've done. Gradually we turned one still into two, and two stills into three. Then we invested in a much bigger custom built still from Italy, which we named Ferrara, because it's very much similar to a Ferrari and probably cost the same. But it's very much been a journey of organic growth for us. And I think a huge challenge for me in the early days was that capacity. So we'd get an order and I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to fulfill it. It was an amazing problem to have. And through always being at the limit of capacity, we ran an extraordinarily efficient business, not intentionally by any means, but just, being probably understaffed and underemployed. We were just way too much to do with very few people, myself and my sister. It took us a long time to hire the first person, and we just ran an extraordinarily efficient business with just limited resources.
I speak to a lot of people, and I'm trying to think who's James Bailey, who's the CEO of Waitrose. He said to me, the brands need to get really clear on their path to profit. Yeah, that's one of the things he said. One thing I'm kind of picking up from you, Tarquin, is you do a lot of planning with the Thai restaurant, the Venezuela, Colombia economic analytics and stuff. That's not. I don't really have any kind of plan with this, or and I think a lot of founders are like that as well. They may not have a plan. They've got an idea for creating a banging product, something they love doing. They can do 6-7 days a week. But you had 50k and you've built this. You're now at 10 million. 10 million a year to kind of set retail sales, as you say. What are the one or two kind of big levers you think you pulled to get to profit pretty quickly? Because I think that could help a lot of people.
That is a good question. I had incredibly low overhead. I think that was definitely
by being in privy to Padso.
Probably being in things are definitely cheaper. We're quite a rural area. The rent, I think we were paying, as I said, £300 a month. I think if you were based in a central London location, probably if you're in potentially you could have a distillery in a bar or a restaurant, or some in a more prime location that you could 10x, maybe even 100 times that level of overhead. So that was very low, and I didn't really have a marketing budget. I didn't really have a budget for anything. I was making it, and what we were really doing, I was concentrating on trying to sell it. So selling it was, again, me putting up an email list of the independent wine shops around England and then dropping them an email saying, "Hi, I've got this gin. Would you like to stock it?" And these were the days where they'll be like, "Yeah, I'd love to try it," or "Yeah, I'll order 2 cases." So it was extraordinary. I think that timing part of it was just extraordinary. So I was you're opening accounts and winning business. I wouldn't say very easily, definitely, but probably easier than it is today. And I think it was that perfect point that we'd made something that people were interested in, not just locally. So we had fantastic support from our local county, obviously in Cornwall and region, but also nationally as well. And it we had decent sales. I think that's obviously really important off the bat. I was busy.
What were you doing in your first year, sales-wise?
First year, over 300 grand. So
we'll get just quickly on. But one thing I think is sometimes when you're manufacturing, you said you didn't have a marketing budget and you didn't have necessarily a sales team. I think when you make your product yourself, that is your marketing. I spoke to Louise Avery, who does LA not LA kombucha. Yeah. They make it themselves. That is their marketing story. Yes. And I think the best marketing budget is your product. And we're going to get onto the actual packaging, like the Perry from Big Fish calls it packvertising.
Yes, yeah.
I think, for people listening to this, sometimes if you boil everything away, really just reduce it all the way down to what makes a great brand. Yeah. It's the product is the salesman, the product Definitely. Is the marketing, the packvertising. I think you're a darling example of doing that well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we were saying in terms of the my brain's
how did I get from profitably grow or from 0 to 10 or what are the 3 things which helped us get to profitability? So one is definitely sales. I think those are important.
Yeah, sorry. So that was it. Where was so you got to 300 grand in the first year. Yeah. So we've talked right at the beginning of this conversation of you driving to the Gurnard's Head, which is one boozer. You do your talk. Mm-hmm. From there, that day, 30th of July, to 30th of July the next year, 2014, how do you make 300 grand?
So I think we sold over 15,000 bottles of gin, roughly 300 grand in sales. This is very roughly speaking. Yeah,
of course,
But similarly, maybe your gross margin is a third, let's say, roughly. And so with our overhead, we're basically able to pay myself and my sister a salary and cover the overhead of the distillery, which was minimal. So that's how I guess we pretty much eventually paid a salary. So that's how we pretty much, our path to profit was in year 1. We basically turned a profit from the first financial year, which is amazing. And I didn't know that was an extraordinary feat at the time either. I knew business, you had to make money, but I hadn't. It's a tough one. I hadn't anticipated to necessarily make a loss. So I always knew I had to make money. I didn't know how well it was going necessarily. It was kind of, I knew that I had this, my stress at that time was not being able to make enough gin. So I made all the gin at Tarquins, and I did probably for the first 4, potentially even 5 years of the company's life, right? So I got moved from 1 still to 2 stills to 3 stills, and I would run them potentially at our peak season 7 days a week myself, while still trying to run the company. At that point, probably in year 3, we had half a dozen employees as well. So it was so as I said, we were just extraordinarily efficient. But I think at first it's always important to have those sales. I think 300 grand in year 1 is pretty extraordinary, and without quite a significant marketing budget. And definitely we've been very lucky by being based in a region which is phenomenally supportive of local and independent brands, launched at a time where people were very much considerate of their food miles, cared about what they were eating, what they were drinking, and very much engaged and perceptive to my story of how and why we made our products. I think it was potentially easy, maybe easier than it is today. I wouldn't say easy to get the sales, but we'd get those sales, and people say, and it is true, and it circles back round to the product part of it. It's easy to get that first sale. I can sell a couple of cases of gin to an independent wine shop in Yorkshire, but to get that second sale is the important one, and that's where
How do you get the second sale?
I think that's where it boils down to the product.
Yeah.
And that is it. So, because I did it myself, and I was very much obsessed with making it taste delicious and, if a little bit better than those ones on the high street. And at the end of the first year, something that we, which gave us the pat on the back that we've been doing something right. We did win a gold medal at International Wine and Spirits competition in London, one of only 6 gins out of hundreds to do so worldwide, and it sort of validated the fact that we had made something which was delicious and people enjoyed it, so they finished that bottle and they'd be keen to buy another one. And I think that's what led to growth in the second year. And so we built on that 300 and we did 600 the next year, literally doubling in size. And then the next year we did 1.2. So, and then the next year we almost doubled again. So for the first 5 years of business, we almost doubled in size every year, which is phenomenal and super unheard of. And it got to 2019, I think, and we were 29th fastest growing company in the UK on that Sunday Times Fast Track 100, where they take your compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, and it was kind of phenomenal, and it feels like a whirlwind now, 11 years on. But as I said, my greatest stress at that point, it was the growing pains of building a business. What do you do when demand outstrips supply? And
describe that viscerally, that stress, because it sounds, I know, it's an amazing story and it's super inspiring, but it sounds almost too good to be true. It's like like the bunny walking down the fucking street. You know what I mean? But like like what you said, you kind of said 3 or 4 times stress.
Yeah.
Describe the impact of the stress on you and how did you navigate that? Because those first few 6, 12, 18 months can be kind of abhorrently stressful.
Yeah.
And how did you navigate that?
I think that it was probably a good type of stress, right? So even though it's slightly overwhelming, so there's just a lot of balls in the air, which I was juggling. Overwhelming, but equally, that it's a good overwhelming. So the result is definitely positive, that you've got these sales. And it's really, how do you solve the solution? How do you increase capacity? How do you make more? Growing at 100% year on year is... it's difficult. It comes with its set of challenges, and ultimately, a more experienced or a slightly better operator probably could have increased capacity a lot, or would have done a lot faster than me, and met that demand and grown the company bigger and faster and better than I have done. But the way that I was restrained, it took me a year and a half to hire our first production people to help with bottling. I had a bit of help from my family. I was maybe a bit too slow at the beginning to really try and scale things up. But equally, I don't know if it worked in my favor, always having this slight bottleneck of not being able to fulfill some of these orders, creating a little bit about a buzz about our brand. Maybe, these retailers saying, can't get Tarquins in stock, it's unavailable, we're on the waiting list, it's coming in next week. And then they tell their, that word of mouth buzz, because we were kind of this cult, maybe not cult, we were this independent brand, very much one discovered by those pioneers, the people willing to seek out these independent gin brands. And within that small community, and which had grown through Facebook and eventually Instagram, maybe we, inadvertently, but we created this buzz around the brand, which helped facilitate more sales growth for the future. So, had I met that supply, maybe we would have flopped early doors. I'm not sure. Maybe we'd be 10 times the size. But
I am absolutely over the bloody moon that Big Fish, yes, Big Fish, the big dons of Challenger Food and Drink brand design. I mean, Perry is an absolute legend. He's designed every Challenger brand in your cupboard. Charlie Bigham's, Goo, Tyrrell's, Rana, Clipper Tea. The list is endless. And Big Fish are looking to speak to the next wave of Challenger Food and Drink brands who are a force for good. They're looking to invest in brands, and we've got this sick thing coming next year that you do not want to miss out on. If you want to speak to Big Fish, if you want to go to the Fish Bowl, drop me a DM and I can make it happen. North Star, get listed, say listed, and grow. Do you actually know your shopper? If you don't know your shopper, you're literally pissing and spunking money up the wall. Knowing your shopper is the secret weapon to unlock more grocery listings and more stores. But not knowing your shopper is literally like driving in the dark, hungover, without a sat-nav, in a thunderstorm, in February with 5 miles of petrol in the tank. But knowing your shopper is like having a sat-nav. A full tank of petrol, it's a glorious sunny day, you're listening to the Sugar Babes, and you've got a fresh hot pumpkin spice latte by your side. North Star Illuminator is the shopper map to the promised land of growth and success. It does 3 wonderful things for your brand. 1, make your marketing budget sweat. When you've got lucid, crystal clarity on exactly where each precious penny is going, you know how to drive loyalty with existing customers or even bring new shoppers into your brand. Numero 2, what's actually driving performance? Do you actually know why your sales are going up and down? You need to know, like, are you bringing new shoppers into the category? Is that driving growth? Are loyal customers buying more of your brand? Are shoppers switching in and out of your brand versus other brands? I mean, Perfect Head's a glorious example. They are bringing new shoppers into sports and energy. They are so incremental versus, say, chocolate bars, where people just switch in and out of brands all the time. The more you know this, the more oomph you've got with your buyer when you go to do a marketing plan, a joint business plan with retailers. The buyers want to know how incremental you are to the category. That is your passport to success. North Star is your passport. And what you can do is you can literally see it by channel, by retailer, get so specific. If you're looking to go to the next level, honestly, get in touch with North Star and go to the promised land.
I went to a pizza place called Vincenzo's in a bit like Crisp. I don't know if you've been to Crisp in Fulham. Have you heard of the Crisp pizza?
No.
Oh, if you're in Fulham, Fulham Hammersmith. It's unbelievable pizza. Same, Vincenzo's up in Watford. But they've got a thing, and I went there. They're like, come and have some pizza. You know, you're doing the podcast, and they purposefully only have 200 pizzas a day.
Yes.
So I'm in this restaurant, and I'm thinking that is a brave strategy.
Yeah.
And people are coming out. I've travelled from Crystal Palace. I've travelled from, I can't remember, somewhere else. I've travelled from somewhere. And the guy is literally, Tom's name is like, yeah, sorry, we're out today. We sold out in 2 minutes. And I was sat there having my pizza. I was like, this is genius. Like, it's the whole scarcity thing, you know.
Yes.
People, as soon as you, I think it's Robert Cialdini's like weapons of influence. Like, number 1 is, number 3 is scarcity or whatever. But that is such a great strategy because you want people, create a hype around it. When people finally do get their mitts on the pizza, they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's almost this little beautiful kind of alchemy of hype, if that's the right way of saying it.
Yeah, so I had wondered if I'd created that by mistake, and possibly it could have been the case. So as I said, it was probably a positive stress, I just remember I'd taken one of possibly my first holiday that I'd taken maybe in year 2 of the business, because I was very much doing it non-stop. As I said, 7 days a week, up to 12 hours a day. And it was just, I threw everything into this company. I didn't really have any other responsibilities, no wife, no kids, no mortgage. It was just like, this is what I'm doing. But I went on holiday with some friends, and I remember, and I maybe only reflected on this when he told me, my friend Richard, he was like, an order came in, I was checking my emails, and I was like, oh no. And he was like, what's happened at work? Something terrible has happened. He's like, something, still's fallen down, something's broken down. And I was like, oh my, I've got an order. And he was like, well, what? I had an export order for like a full pallet of 600 bottles, say. And I couldn't fulfill it because I knew it would tip us out of stock. And we were going to go out of stock while I was abroad. And, all I was going to do is have a backlog and be really, really busy. And he couldn't believe it. He was like, your biggest problem is that you can't, that you've got an order. He was like, this is completely crazy. It's like, and I think that's when he told me he knew that I had a real business and was just like, I think you're onto something here. I think I told you at the time, I don't think England needs another gin mate. But, when he saw that, he was like, I think you're doing something right. So, carry on. I think you could be onto something. And that's I don't know whether it sounds odd looking back at it, but being slightly concerned when an order comes in is a sort of strange, ironic kind of feeling. I wish I had that feeling now as we're bigger and suddenly you've got overheads and you need probably to hit a certain level of sales for that break even on a monthly basis. So there's more strain, or not strain, there's more requirements within a business. But then, I had such low overhead that it was a very different dynamic. I think the requirements and stresses of a business change as you mature. But that I think we were extraordinarily lucky. This was, we managed to do a lot of things quite right. And
what out of the 300K?
Yeah.
In that first year, where was that coming? What was the split of that? Was it coming from bars, restaurants, retail?
Probably a good mix of they call it on and off trade. So on trade is typically where you drink in the bar, so bars, restaurants, hotels. Then off-premise would be retailers. So that would have been a good mix of both. So lots of independent wine shops, those would have been and farm shops, those would have been our biggest retailers. And then we were very much weighted initially to the southwest. So naturally, you're going to sell on your doorstep. So lots of bars, independent bars, restaurants, hotels in Cornwall. We'd supply wholesalers. So you sell to a drinks wholesaler by the case and they break it down by the bottle. And they sell to bars by the bottle. And then we would sell direct via courier to lots of these wine shops. So we have these padded boxes and you can ship them across the country quite easily. And so probably a 50-50 split in the beginning, and it probably stayed that way all the way until COVID, really, for how many years is that? COVID 2020. For 7 years, we're probably half on trade, half off trade.
What I found super kind of intriguing is how this distribution, whether you meant to or not, but the constraining by geography was kind of interesting, because obviously for people who come to Cornwall, Tarquins is literally ubiquitous. You go to the boozers, it's the Tarquins umbrellas. You see it, you've got 7 shops, physical retail stores. You see, like, the Blue, in my eyes, this is before, kind of very early days of the podcast, way before we'd even met, I was like, fucking hell, Tarquins is kind of synonymous with Cornwall. And I think there's a genius in terms of this constraint thing, again, of like, I think Chris D, who's the worked at, he was CEO of Harrods and old CEO of Booths, I think. And he was saying early stage brands want to go and plaster the whole country, which can work if you can go gangbusters and have the money to do it. But also there's the constraining by geography, with here obviously Cornwall, and in doing so you build this distribution density, which is almost this kind of hot furnace. And I think, as we were saying beforehand, it's like the whole Seth Godin thing of, if I give you some purple dye or tie-dye dye, it's much easier. Everyone wants to go and try and put that purple dye in an ocean and make it go purple, whereas actually if you try and just do a swimming pool, bang, you can get this explosive kind of awareness in one burning hot place, and then from there can spread it across the country. And I think you guys have done that super well. So you, what was the hardest day in that in fact, maybe not that first bit, because it seems, I always believe when I speak to people, there's a period of momentum, and it either comes right off the bat, like yourself, it comes 3 years in, but it can sometimes come 7-8 years in. Do you know what I mean? There's a period of momentum that just, and when you've got momentum, things are not a piece of piss. Nothing's a piece of piss, but like, it's not as
solves a lot of problems. It covers a lot of problems.
Momentum solves a lot of problems. What have been the periods when it's kind of gone, not necessarily, what's been the hardest day in this 10 years where you've gone, fuck me, why am I doing this?
That is a good question. I think we've had a few road bumps.
You seem very upbeat, mate. You just a few road bumps over here. I'm thinking, bloody hell.
I remember the planning process of starting up a distillery, and what I learned. I didn't know much. Obviously, I didn't know anything about business because I was just starting my first one. But I learned that you get it's an endless. You're dealing with a lot of problems, a lot of unexpected problems. You can plan as much as you want, but you're going to get issues along the way, and it's. I think within the operations department of a business, that's really what you're doing. You're problem solving, and really most of those problems come with financial cost. Really, this doesn't work. It's going to cost you an extra $5,000. You're like, okay. So you kind of you have to develop almost a sense of humor and face these problems as positively as you can, and be happy with the solutions. And you kind of have to be quite. Have a bit of initiative perhaps, or be willing to evolve and adapt. So I remember the first big issue we came across was when our bottle, we used to have a stock bottle for our gin, went out of stock. So this was
what stock bottle?
A stock bottle. So it's in a catalogue. It's a bottle which is sold to dozens of suppliers around the world. It's just a bottle, as opposed to a custom bottle where you get it made specifically for you. It's your own mold. It might say Tarquins on it. This was just a generic bottle, which it was technically it was a cognac bottle from France. I bought it from a big French company. Came from cognac. Was manufactured in France. You would have seen it on the market probably in cognac brands. And I wanted something disruptive that no one else used, so I got this bottle. And I go to my supplier one day and say, hi, can I order 3 pallets of bottles? Maybe say that's 3,000 bottles. And he said, unfortunately, we don't have any available for you. And, I didn't even realize this could have been a problem. It was like, what do you mean you don't have any of these bottles? It's like, okay, the factory has run out of stock and they're not producing any for 3 more months. And it's like, well, that doesn't really work for me. If I don't have any bottles, my business shuts down. Like, what am I going to do? And he's like, that's not my problem, mate. I would take a forecast from you, but you're too small. You're buffer stock. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, your levels of volume are so small, you're just like buffer. You'll buffer around the forecast effectively. And at that moment, I was like, oh my God. So I think that was a moment where I thought it could end. It was like, if I got no bottles, it's kind of game over. 3 months with no sales. It's 3 months of, 3 loss-making months of all your overhead. Potentially, can you rebuild your brand from going out of stock? I didn't really knew what would happen. It was the summer, which was our peak season.
What year is this?
This is really early, maybe 2015, potentially, possibly 2016.
So how do you go about solving that? Because the one thing we're going to get onto is I think the way you crack D2C during lockdown was some fucking prison break shit, mate.
Oh, thank you.
so one thing that in my kind of research talk of you, mate, is this ability, your ability to solve problems and look at things is very unique, and the way you kind of crack the D2C from the brand when your back was up against the wall. We're gonna get onto that, but specifically with this standard bottle that's in the catalogue, Geezer says you run out of stock. Can you kind of just understand like kind of the texture and the tapestry of the way your brain kind of looks at these problems?
I think this is probably a very more of an easy one to solve. I mean, ultimately, you've got to probably put your gin in a different bottle. Does it need to look the same? Is it going to be the same color? So, I had to exhaust every avenue. I got one of my best friends who's half French, he's fluent in French, calling up all these other wholesalers in France. Do they have any in stock? And no one seemed to, and eventually I moved to something with a screw top, which was slightly off-white, off-clear. It was slightly, had an opaque sort of greeny tint, and it was slightly unpleasant, and the cork wasn't, the cap wasn't great, and it was a terrible halfway house, but it meant that we were still on the shelves, people were still ordering it, and we were able to swap them out as soon as we got the real bottles in stock. So it was disaster averted, but I just remember being told that these bottles was out, it felt like the end of the world to me at the time. But as I said, you kind of, that you will be able to get over lots of these road bumps, and it is just having the patience and really trying to work through it.
If you could, as you say, there's a gazillion bumps in the road or blips, and I think the framing of that is actually really shrewd. Quite simple, but sometimes the best things are simple I'm the worst at this. I can sometimes think, oh fucking hell, the house, panic, thoughts go a gazillion miles per hour, everything's going Pete Tong, what's the fucking point in doing it? And it's actually just like, they're just blips. If you could sum up, and this can kind of be the launch pad for the next part, is sum up in one sentence what out of all the problems you've had, what is your one problem solving sentence, so that when say someone listens to this, it's all going Pete Tong at their kombucha or chocolate or crisps brand. What would you say that is?
I'm trying to think, what do I do if I have a terrible problem? I think, things get better with time. I think time, is a bit of a healer ultimately. And I think if you feel, it's good to remove yourself from the position and try and, de-stress a little bit, do something relaxing or calming. I think in this day and age, it's probably spending time with my two boys, my toddlers, sort of reflecting on, the bigger picture, that it's, ultimately we're just making we're making booze. This is a fun industry. This is, I've got the world's best job. I make gin. I'm able to have a job in Cornwall, the most beautiful part of England, if not the world. And it's kind of, if you can remove yourself from the initial problem and look at the bigger picture, I think you can tackle it a little bit more easily and break it down into what it is and try and just think of the clear solution. So, obviously it's get a new bottle, or, I think we'll probably move on to COVID. That's probably the next big roadblock in our journey.
So I think I read a post you said, my days of running Facebook ads from the sofa are over, sadly. Tell me about, as I say, it's like some mad prison break kind of, just super. Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about being on the sofa running Facebook ads. Add some colour to that.
So this is sort of COVID time. It's March 2020.
And what size? Just before? 5. Yeah, what size of the business is at this point?
We're probably around 5 million in sales, roughly speaking, and those are the majority of those wholesale and direct to retail sales, split between wholesalers supplying the on-trade, the bars and restaurants, and then independent wine shops supplying or independent wine shops, which is the off-trade. About a 50-50 split. But lockdown was lockdown, and alcohol was, bars and restaurants closed. Most retailers closed as well, and I think obviously we were facing challenges the same as most other businesses in the world. But I think within the spirits industry, it was a big question mark of what does one do now, and it felt a little bit like that bottle scenario. It was like, my business is shut. I've got all these employees. I probably had 20, maybe 30 employees, 20, 30 at that time. Obviously we got the furlough scheme that came out, which was obviously fantastic. I think prior to that scheme, we'd all voted to take half pay to sort of allow everyone to maintain their jobs in a leadership meeting. But we didn't have to go down that route, and we managed to, a few people take furlough, and then a few people sort of keep the cogs and lights on and supply the channels. When I say channels, sales channels, effectively, that we're allowed to within the constraints of the government lockdown. And that was very much direct to consumer. So, which we hadn't done it yet. It was on my to-do list, but we'd been so busy trying to fulfill these trade orders that it sounds silly, never really got around to setting up our e-commerce store, shipping direct to consumer. I think we'd focused on Amazon for 2 years prior. And we used to drive traffic to Amazon, and that's just what we did is the halfway, because the compromise. But
because
we hadn't set up our own website to sell direct to consumer.
It's just easier to.
It was easier, yeah. It was easier, and it sort of had a bit of a benefit for us, and unexpected benefit in COVID as well. So, lockdown was announced, and we knew we had to set up the site. Shopify is amazing. I know lots of brands use it, and it's just the super user-friendly direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform. So we created a nice Shopify site, popped the page into our WordPress site, and we're kind of off to the races. So we do all the picking and packing, or we were doing all the picking and packing for our trade orders in-house. We didn't have any trade orders.
Tell me what I want to get into is how you figured out how much how much you could potentially make as this lucrative channel.
Yeah.
Because I think that really adds some texture to your ability to solve problems. So you went on and you're ordering off your competitors.
So we set up our direct to consumer channel, and we started selling, and it was kind of, how do you drive traffic to your website? So the first thing is really, the whole world was on their phone 8 hours a day, or their computer at that time. Huge web traffic, numbers you have never seen before, because no one's doing anything else. So learn about Facebook ads. This is when I talk about being on my sofa doing Facebook ads. I love marketing, or I developed my love or sort of knowledge for marketing as I grew the brand, and not really just passionate about it. So I set these, I use the Facebook ads app or ads manager app. Did all these
all
ads.
on your phone?
All on my phone, yeah.
And what were some of the first 3-4 ads?
We have this incredible photography. So one of our strengths again is our product photography, this beautiful lifestyle photography. really capturing that coastal. I describe ourselves as an aspirational coastal lifestyle brand. We have this generally, if anyone hasn't seen, please do, on our Instagram, it sort of captures the spirit. But this beautiful photography, it translates really well in this digital rich media setting. And so really all I had to do was post these lovely photos with a bit of comment, bring a slice of Cornish sunshine, lockdown deal, you'd buy a bottle and get a free bottle of tonic, free deliveries, gin, tonic, I'm good to go, I'm ready, this lockdown special. I spend a bit of money on these ads, and suddenly, you get huge returns. So quickly realized what I worked out how to do was watching videos online, reading blogs on best practice, and sort of taught myself in a week or so. And we started spending about £1,000 up to maybe some days £1,500 a day on ads. And they would get multiple returns on investment. So, 5, 6, 7 times return on ad spend at its peak. But how did I know that this was a decent channel? Honestly, I saw another brand on LinkedIn with their D2C orders, done for the day. They post a happy pic with, 3 large, three large, not pallets. They're almost like this shopping trolleys of boxes that they're sending out to their consumers. And I'm like, oh my God, they're doing really well. It's like, we should be doing that well, or can we do better? And it kind of, it's that, I wouldn't say I'm super competitive, but I do like to see what my competitors are up to. So it's those
because you've got this five simple steps to see how much your competitors are selling online or any company. 1, order the cheapest item off their website. 2, wait 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter or longer. 3, order the cheapest item from their website again. Subtract your first confirmation order number from your second number. Do this as often as you want, as many companies like, pop it in a chart. And then you add in an assumption of order value, say 45 gross per order, and then that gives you a good average on what they're selling.
Yeah, definitely. So it just kind of clicked really. So I was keen to see how we were doing. So we got up to about 2 million run rate of sales direct to consumer, pretty much in the first few months for annual sales. So
you built it to 2 million in a couple of months.
Run rate for the year, yeah. So we would do in the first.
Sorry, when you say run rate,
yeah. So within the first, we did get to 2 million in the end. So yeah, year 1 of direct to consumer sales was about 2 million in sales. Yeah. Year 2 was about 2 million as well. So that was the leftover.
Was since the COVID lap, has that petered out, or is it kind of?
It is down on that, yeah. But we're still maintaining.
Yeah.
There was a COVID boom, definitely the COVID boom.
Yeah.
So, but the channels have readjusted as things have opened up. Those sales are coming from elsewhere, effectively.
Sure.
But yeah, I was really keen to see how we were performing and how other brands were doing. Should I be spending more on ads? Should I be more aggressive in our digital marketing? And always just keen to see where you benchmark. You can't really get sales data for independent brands. You can get retail, aggregate sales data from supermarkets, but that's not really my cohort. That's the kind of Gordons and co. So what I would do, as you suggested, there's sequential order numbers typically on Shopify and other e-commerce platforms like WooCommerce. So it is really it's very simple. You can literally make 2 orders over a period of time and subtract your order numbers, and that's pretty much how many orders they've taken between those 2 points of time. I knew roughly how much a spirits company would make per transaction, probably about £45, depending if they've got lots of products on their site. So I could pretty much estimate the actual value. But if not, I could estimate the items. And so what I learned in that first year, we were doing like 4 times as much online sales as one of our, the leader in our or bigger brand, a lot bigger brand than us. We were selling about 4 times as much as them and twice as much as another brand that we were aspiring towards as well. And then maybe they were in supermarkets and that's where they were selling lots of their gin. But at that moment, it's not necessarily helpful to be competitive. It doesn't make you do anything differently. It doesn't affect your own performance, but it definitely gave us a bit of validation. I felt really proud about what we had managed to achieve as a team, and knew that we were doing pretty well, and that we didn't need to be more aggressive than where we were. We were doing a fantastic job, and it's kind of, I think you should, it's one of those, definitely appreciate that moment of having done a fantastic job and sort of celebrate with the team. And even Amazon, I'd mentioned that we'd been driving traffic to Amazon for the past 2 years prior. That had this extraordinary sort of bonus knock-on effect where Amazon has this algorithm where the more you sell, the higher you're ranked, the more you sell. If you're on page 1, top 3, top 5, gins, you're going to sell, 100 or 1,000 times more than the gin on page 2, page 3, page 4, kind of like, Google search results. So we had this enormous organic natural boost on Amazon as, again, their traffic was probably up tenfold the non-COVID periods. People were drinking booze at home. They weren't drinking out. So we also saw that channel go, double overnight. So we were able to recapture our loss of 5 million and recoup that basically from Amazon and direct to consumer. And then as bars and restaurants started opening up as well, we had a growth year and we were up 30-40% year on year at the end of the first year of COVID, which is extraordinary. So, this scenario where the company could have folded or end, somehow, and it was lucky that we made these decisions. We managed to emerge from it in a stronger place as a company, which feels quite extraordinary. But it could have gone two ways. We could have hunkered down for that year or 2 years and be like, we're going to ride this out. We're going to be really lean. We're not spending anything on marketing and wait till the on-trade reopens. So in hindsight, it's very easy to say, our strategy was to diversify and channel. And we knew that we needed to sort of focus our energies on direct to consumer, and we needed to do this and that, but it kind of worked out that way. But I wouldn't say that I sat down in a strategy meeting with a very clear plan of what we needed to do. We just kind of did it reactively, instinctively, and it kind of worked out quite well. So it's kind of, I think in hindsight it feels like a great play, but at the time it was very much survival, and we luckily feels like we've made the right moves.
What were some of those learnings that on the D2C journey, in terms of getting to 2 million? So say I'm trying to sell Hungry merch or something like that, or Hungry crumpets.
Yes.
I've always thought about a Challenger crumpet brand.
Yes, nice.
Because I like
crumpets. It. Yeah. Sourdough.
Or like a Challenger bagel brand to take on New York Bagel.
Nice.
If one day I think I will eventually get the itch to do that. But say I'm trying to sell my bagels or crumpets online, or Kragels.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's not getting picked up.
Okay.
What are some of the 1 to 3 things that you think double down on those to really get this fucker going?
I think that at the time of COVID, everything aligned.
So sorry, this
post-COVID.
This is post.
Post-COVID now, D2C, what would I do?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I definitely say the landscape is harder than it was back then. So what success we had impossible to recreate those, the scenario where everyone's online. We've launched since Tarquins, we've launched new brands. So we launched Twinfin rum in 2020, which was a COVID brand. So we managed to grow that quite well. And then we've launched our vodka called Connie Glazed Vodka in the summer, autumn of 2023. So that is new. So we're very keen on D2C. I love it personally. And we're starting from scratch. So I can almost try and use this Connie Glaze as a case study. And my one, it's not easy. I would say that's the first thing. It's not how it used to be. The glory day, the good old days are I wouldn't say they're over, but it's definitely more challenging.
Challenging, how so?
I suppose ultimately to win those sales on your site. So, where do you find a stranger on the internet to sort of, how does someone land on your website to buy your product? So there has to be obviously as little friction as possible. First of all, you've got to get them on the website. So for us, it's probably Facebook ads. It's probably one of the biggest drivers.
Facebook ad, that still goes on Instagram.
Still goes on Instagram. Yeah. So a meta ad, I guess. So we're big on meta ads. It ties in with our community probably quite well as well.
Yeah.
Our demographic as spirits drinkers. So you need really good content, and content is king. And you can talk about all the different metrics of conversion and impressions, but really none of them matter apart from the quality of your content. And you need something which resonates with your target customer and is something that they're interested in, which is difficult to get right. So you need either beautiful imagery or video or very clever very clever copy, a mixture of the three. And if you can get that right, you can increase your chances of success pretty significantly.
What's the best ad with those three things working in like a gorgeous symphony?
So we find a lot of, everyone's into short form video, and I think that maybe is probably a younger demographic. We probably get the highest conversion and success on single image, just beautiful imagery. And as I said, we're an aspirational brand, so it's probably something coastal related, possibly pouring a drink and getting for us because we're an alcohol brand. So it's something aspirational. If you're sitting in a desk on a rainy day in a busy metropolitan city, you want to transport yourself to have a slice of Cornish sunshine, and you might jump onto the website. And then if there's free delivery and if the price is right compared to Amazon and competitors, I might convert and buy a bottle. But it's definitely to get that consumer into the funnel and down to the conversion. It's more expensive than it used to be in terms of advertising on Meta. So it probably shouldn't be the sole source of traffic.
How are you convert? What are the things you can do as they get to help convert?
Just things like free. I suppose it's like free delivery. So no one wants to pay for the delivery in this day.
You just absorb that.
Yeah, you have to absorb that. You don't really want to compete with your customers either. So you don't want to sell at a price lower than your retail customers because they might be a little bit angry that you're outselling them. You've got to give them a chance. So you're not necessarily going to be the cheapest on your own site as well. So you've got to tackle that as a problem.
Do you add a load of freebies? Because I interviewed a guy from a brand called Space Goods.
Yeah.
And again, I know nothing about D2C. I just find it interesting because he basically said the more product you have, so more SKUs, the more you can bring up the average order spend, which brings down the CAC or something. It's all. I
think freebies, gifts with purchases are a great way to do that. It's less competitive on pure price. But yeah, I think I suppose it has to be as creative as possible to drive that traffic. And I'm not the expert in TikTok and viral videos, but that's probably, partnerships, collaborations with other brands. But really the big thing is now email is probably our bigger driver of revenue these days. I think for brands which have lived through COVID, such as our Tarquins, have a fantastic email database, over 100,000 customers, really engaged customers, ones who are, they've used our website, they love using our website, hopefully they feel loyal to the brand, and we can really drive sales through there. But equally, for a new brand, you've got to build that mailing list again. So
there's sorry to interrupt. There's two things on that, because I think so I've got someone now on board who helps with my TikTok for the podcast, but it doesn't convert. Notoriously TikTok is great for your ego, but doesn't actually convert to downloads. And I've heard from brands it's you could get a TikTok video that gets 500,000 views. Yeah. But it doesn't convert. So it's just kind of vanity metrics.
Yes.
And the more I'm thinking about it is, again, this is coming up from Ossian Rogers from the Devonshire. I said, we were talking about Oscar Wilde, slightly tangential here, but he's got a quote which is, everything popular is wrong. Yeah. And I was like, well, what do you think everything popular is wrong is? And he was basically saying that trends are kind of bottomless and futile because they pass. And I'm thinking with TikTok and your story, Tarquin, of how you're driving sales, it's like, okay, well that they do work in some respects. You had the trend of the COVID. Yeah. But if you boil it down, what is timeless? So Ossian also thinks, how do we build a timeless pub? And I want to talk about how we build a timeless brand. Yeah. And you'll think, well, one thing that hasn't ever gone away is email marketing. Yes. Because the depth of connection with someone, it's permission marketing is what Seth Godin says. It's, I'm giving you permission to my email box, my most kind of clandestine thing you can get access on. And I think that can be really beneficial for people listening to this, is in a world that is jumping so much with the whole attention piece, one that kind of will never change that much is your email inbox.
I think you probably hit the nail on the head. And we're very big into email, and I think that the only difficulty with a new brand is acquiring those you're still acquiring that audience, acquiring those customers one by one. And you can do that online, again, probably by partnerships with other brands, similar community, with more meta ads. You could acquire email addresses that way. Or
does that work?
We don't do it that much. Someone might get it to work well. It's probably expensive, and people might look into lifetime acquisition, lifetime value to a customer, but it's expensive. And I think I'm always keen on lots of trial and error, and does it work, does it not? No, we'll try it again. Is it our copy, is it our timing, what's going wrong, and we'll try and refigure it out. But sometimes it just doesn't. In the body of
the email, mm-hmm. What is some of the copy that's really converted to sales? And that's kind of part one. And then part two, how do you build that human connection with people?
I think people have, for us, ultimately, we're a craft or small batch distillery. We do make gin in small batches. So what we're known for are limited editions, and those convert phenomenally well, where we do drops. We'll drop 1,000 bottles or 500 bottles of some fantastic seasonal hand forage gin, and that converts phenomenally well because it's almost like early access. It's this community of subscribers get these products before anyone else. So those are phenomenally successful. I think lots of brands get particularly in the cost of living crisis, are very much leaning into deals, pure, whether it's gifts or pure cash, promotional offers are very popular. But in terms of, I think what is important to me is really to be consistent with our brand messaging and make sure that it feels personal and really get across that our personality as well to the customer, and make sure that it's content that they want. So no one's gonna get. It's kind of some things that I do chat to our marketing team about, and this isn't necessarily about email, but it can apply, and it's about posting on social media as well. It's kind of no one remembers when you don't post. So it's talking about frequency of posting more or less. Don't post bad content for the sake of posting. Don't feel like you need to post once a week or twice a week or any moment of time. That they're not going to remember whether you have posted, but they will remember if they see a post they don't like. If they see something they don't like, they're going to unsubscribe and you'll lose them forever. So it's kind of just making sure the quality of content is fantastic and that you would be proud of it. And it's kind of, I have various internal benchmarks, and if I'm sense checking something, a brand that I think does a fantastic job, and you mentioned that you recognize our blue as a brand color, and it's something that we've almost borrowed from Veuve Clicquot, their yellow or their orange, and Aperol does it with orange, and lots of other brands to an extent, but Veuve Clicquot and their yellow, and they're probably best in class premium luxury brand, lifestyle brand. They're associated to events. But I ask myself, would Veuve Clicquot write this or do this? Or, Sipsmith is even a good example. They're a leader and they've got best practice in marketing. Would they do it? And it's like, if I think no, they wouldn't, I probably shouldn't be doing it either. So I think, having some boundaries of what you post, being consistent and staying true to brand guidelines is important. But then quickly just bouncing back in terms of acquiring email, I think it is difficult. It's not easy to build new brands, but what we're doing is looking to acquire that offline as well. So we've got these 7 shops. We have over 100,000 people passing through our shops every year, through our tours as well. It's about engaging with them to not only convert them to being fans of our products, Tarquin, Swinfen, and Connie Glaze, but to also capture their email address and chat to them online as well. So I think, again, part of our success, if you like, is that we're very densely distributed in Cornwall. Yeah. But a lot of, I think several 100,000 people live in Cornwall, but we also swell at peak season or school holidays, where we get, I think, over 5 million overnight visitors a year come on holiday to the county. So if you're selling 200 bottles to the Dog and Duck pub down the road, there's a good chance that if the majority of that is in the summer, that you're not selling it to just Cornish people. You're selling it to people from London, Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool, Newcastle. So you can market, and this is what we've sort of coined this phrase in-house, as you can market to a national audience on a local level. So, and I think that is what has enabled us with Tarquins to grow from, you know, me selling that first batch out of the boot of my car to the Gurner's Head to 2022, we were the largest super premium gin brand, which £30 plus price point in the UK, where we did something like 500,000 bottles. So it's kind of, you know, we've been able to market cost effectively to a national audience by advertising locally. If that kind of has a bit of a ring to it. And then we use digital marketing to follow people back along the M4, M5, M6 motorway corridors around the rest of the UK. And what we coined this as a marketing phenomenon, we call it the Doom Bar effect. So there's a cask ale brand called Doom Bar, which grew from a microbreweries in the 90s or 80s when it started up. In Rock, which is a village just the other side of the Camel River to us, it grew to become a £150 million retail sales brand, or sales brand by retail value in the UK, the largest cask ale brand. So this tiny Cornish brewery became the number one player in the UK, and it really did that via consistent marketing and just really solid distribution, working from Cornwall outwards along those key arteries to the rest of the country, really leaning on that core foundation of visitors to the region. And it sounds, I don't know whether it sounds simple or it's simple effectively, but it's probably quite complicated in how it works. But yeah, you know, market locally and then follow everyone back to their home.
I'm just trying to think if for other brands, like, does that strategy work because of Cornwall? I.e., like, I love the whole, you know, what I think you've done very well is build brand depth through the classes, through the tours we've seen today.
Yeah.
But the one of the advantages of being down here is that you have the swell of Cornwall during the summers. I'm just trying to think, how does a brand who's based in Milton Keynes, for example, is it possible? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's harder. Yeah, no, yeah. I think we've got an amazing tailwind. You know, I think we've got fantastic advantage of location. Not only, as I said, the local community is incredibly supportive of locally made products. So they've been huge supporters of the brand from the very beginning. You know, these are the guys who own wine shops, you know, writing me checks up front, being like, "Thank you so much for, you know, seeing me hand delivering it, or my dad would deliver it," and you know.
But then again, like, there's probably gin brands. The strategy does work for, like, you know, there's probably gin brands based up in the Lake District.
Yeah.
You know, so as in, I do still think you've done a fucking amazing job, and I think the brand I've got a piece which I wrote in my newsletter between brand depth and brand awareness. People wank over brand awareness. It's the top line figures, and but I believe brand awareness builds Meek Fans.
Yes.
Whereas brand depth, which is doing things that don't scale, which is the tour I saw today. There's 8 people here. Yeah. The 8 people are going round. There's a depth of connection to you as a brand, and I think what you guys have done through constraining geography and constraining, kind of building this, you know, putting the purple dye in the swimming pool, not the ocean, and then what you said there about using the arteries of the M4, M5, M6, whatever, to push the brand outwards is delicious. Let's talk about the bottle, because again, it's beautiful, and Perry talks about this thing from Big Fish, who did loads of brands. Yeah, he actually did Sipsmith.
I remember I chatted to them actually for my refresh. I think they're out of my budget, out of my price range.
Yes,
but yeah, they're one of the top. They love their work.
Oh yeah,
and I think I've read about. I think I've watched a clip on, is it Packvertising or Packutizing or something?
It's genius, and it's the premise of it is you can spend all your money in the world on ATL campaigns, but ultimately, I think someone said to me. I think Giles Brooks said this to me, 90% of the sales come from the shelf edge, in grocery at least. Yeah. So 80-20 rule, put your money and your spend where it's actually going to move the needle, and actually that is the best salesman in the world. And I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. Talk to me about what, I don't know, have you got any pictures of what it used to look like?
Yeah, I've got.
Is there any?
This is a limited edition, but it used to look like that. but change the colour. That's the wrong.
But so it's still had the wax. It's still had the wax.
The wax was blue. It's same colour.
The
The one in the second.
This one. It used to be, that's the bottle, but it used to be blue wax and black label. So look, I mean, very rustic.
but the wax was still...
Yeah, we always had the wax.
What's the why behind the wax?
So the wax is kind of when I start, you need a tamper-proof seal. So that's legally for any container of drink. It needs a tamper-proof seal. So that could be a ribbon, a ribbon strip, a plastic seal, and it could be a wax dip. And I was very much inspired by some of these really cool crafty brands in the States. And I had literally a Pinterest mood board that I shared with these brand designers, which had a wax dip. And it just naturally over the course of design got exaggerated, and because of the peculiar, because of the wine cognac shape of our bottle, it flowed quite nicely with a drip as well. So it kind of it became a key part of what we do, and it's almost iconic. Pops out on a back bar if the lighting's good, and you can kind of recognise that they've got Tarquins listed quite easily, and it has this sense of theatre when you open it as well. We have these little ribbon strips underneath. You can pop the cork, and it's just super cool. It definitely.
And is each wax strip is essentially different because I think because I actually I remember being down and there's a farm shop in Bristol and I was sampling next to one of your guys back. This is
nice.
I'm talking this is before COVID.
Yeah.
So, but I just thought, and this is probably my naivety, is that it was just a kind of rinse
Capsule.
and repeat.
Yeah.
And I think is actually the fact that each one, and we've seen it downstairs, is hand dipped,
Yeah, each one is unique, and I think the packaging is meant to reflect the care and attention that goes into creating each bottle. That was very much the brief when I started, and it's wax dipped. It's sort of ribboned by hand as well. The label features this unique batch character tasting note, so we highlight the lead tasting note of each batch, and that gets popped on. So it's meant to look a little bit, it was meant to be a little bit disruptive when we started. I didn't want it to look like any other gin on the shelf. So I wasn't by no means an expert in marketing, but I knew I didn't want it to be in a green, slightly cuboid bottle. And equally, as we refreshed the brand in 2018, we could add those additional features as our brand had developed. As I say, I talk about us being a coastal brand. So our bottle is pretty much what we describe it as in sea glass. It's designed to look as if it's almost just washed up on a beach in Cornwall. It's got this puffin, which is an icon flying with a sprig of juniper in its mouth. It's got waves at the bottom, and in Cornish at the bottom it says bottoms up, or cheers in Cornish. So you turn the bottle upside down, it says DIAGEO. So it's meant to be disruptive to an extent.
It's fucking Cornish, put it that way.
And it is wacky, and I think some people love it, some people don't love it. They might hate it, and it's kind of, you can never please everyone.
That's what you want.
And I think that it has definitely served us well without those big deep pockets for marketing and above the line campaigns. Never done an above the line campaign. Never done a fancy billboard other than a billboard on the back of a van in Cornwall by a roundabout. That's as above the line as we go. But I think it's definitely fared us well, and it definitely helps sway that decision for them to pick it off the shelf. But we really do, I think it really is that product quality as well. I genuinely think we make the most delicious gin in the world. It's sort of beautifully zesty, floral. It's beautifully fresh. And it's just, it does get that second sale, that really difficult second repeat business. We've managed to build this community, and that's what, that packaging helps get that first sale. The liquid definitely helps get the second, third, fourth, fifth sale. And I think that has been the driver of our growth over the past decade is definitely product is key.
What I want to talk about is, if I can find it. Yeah, what would you do if you brought Pimm's off DIAGEO? Here's 5 things I'd do to turn this legacy brand into a cash cow. 1, earn an extra 3 million per year. 2, spend this 3 million on self-endorsement. 3, revamp the jug. 4, bring you Wimbledon sponsorship as headline partner. 5, everything, everywhere, all at once.
So
this is a LinkedIn post you wrote, and I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, thanks.
Just unpack or bolster on some bits to each of those points. So yeah. Firstly, what made you write that? I thought it was brilliant.
So in the news, and apparently it might be incorrect, it was reported in the financial news of a leading newspaper that PIMS was looking to offload Diageo, and they'd appointed investment bankers to sell it.
Wait, PIMS
is owned by Diageo.
They were trying to get rid of Diageo.
No, Diageo was trying to sell PIMS.
Right.
Alleged. So this was the news article. The Diageo, one of the world's largest drinks companies, owns Gordon's, Tanqueray, Johnny Walker. They're looking to sell PIMS, which is one of their brands. It's obviously a huge brand in the UK, not so huge outside of the UK. It's very seasonal. It's really big in summer. Doesn't really sell much in the winter. So I guess these are the strategic reasons why they might want to offload it, so they could potentially focus on something else. This is what was reported. So in response to that, naturally, I'm just very enthusiastic about the drinks business. I have a lot of ideas for our own company, but it almost feels easier to be, it's easier to give someone else advice as to what they should do. It's easier to have the idea than to execute. So doing what I suggested is probably hard, but for PIMS is a brand which I love and it's iconic. So I just had to think, who is going to buy it? And subsequently I heard after I wrote this post on LinkedIn that it's not and never was for sale apparently. So I don't know why it came out in the news. But it's kind of, I like the challenge of what would I do with this legacy British brand, which is being, I wouldn't say, which is no longer as popular as it was a decade ago, where Aperol is coming in and taking a lot of its shares the same drinking occasion, and Aperol is taking some of its share, I would imagine, probably quite significantly. So it's kind of like, what would I do if I owned PIMS? I can't afford PIMS. I'm sure it's worth hundreds of millions of pounds if they were to sell it. But what would I do if I did? And first, just a quirk of alcohol duty. So excise duty, the tax on alcohol in the UK is phenomenally expensive. It's about £8-9 a bottle on the average, 37.5% or 42% bottle of gin.
What's it in, say, other countries?
It might be half. It might be even less than half. It could be more. So in Australia, it's actually higher than ours. There are 1 or 2 countries where it's more, but we're one of the highest in Europe.
Why is it so? Why?
Ultimately, the idea is to get people drinking less alcohol. So that's the integral, to raise tax revenues ultimately as well. So you're solving a social issue potentially whilst increasing your tax receipts. So it's kind of, in the eyes of the Chancellor, it's kind of a win-win. Put up alcohol duty, no problems. So there was the largest increase in alcohol duty that we've had for decades last summer in August. Not only did they increase it by about 10%. Not only did they increase it by about 10%, they made a tiered system. So they alcohol at lower ABVs, below at 22% or below, pays a lower rate than alcohol at higher ABVs to try and get you to drink more moderate products. So spirits are taxed at a higher rate than liqueurs or lower ABV products. So there's this magic. Sorry, it's a bit technical, but there's this magic number at 22% alcohol by ABV. You're paying something like one or two. I can't remember what I said. £1 or £2 less per bottle in tax. PIMS is at 25%. If they change their ABV to 22%, they would save several £1 million a year based on their sales volume of numbers on excise duty payments, basically. So overnight, they could, by just simple recipe change, they could save £3 million a year. That was my first suggestion. And lots of brands have done that in the market.
So
they've genuinely lowered their ABV, and I was very amazed. I was genuinely surprised to see that PIMS hadn't done it, because lots of people have made that move. So that would be my number one. My number two would probably be to get a celebrity endorsement. I think it's a great brand. It has a fantastic brand awareness. I think awareness in the UK is something like 80% of drinkers. People know PIMS. They're just not necessarily drinking it. So it's, how do you get it cool again? Margot Robbie, probably the most, in number one female celebrity in the world. She's not British because we want it to resonate with non-British drinkers. She's Australian. She's also obviously a Hollywood star, so you can potentially nail the Australians, the Americans, and the Brits all in one. Probably a lot more than £3 million for a deal, but who knows? And then I think it's all about that sense of occasion. So we, again, I'm trying to think of another reason of our success over the years with our gin, and it was something we did quite well was this copper glass. We did it as it's like a wine glass. I don't know whether everyone drinks gin and tonics in these large wine glasses now. It came from Spain. But we invested our small marketing budget in 2014, 2015, our first few years into glassware. That's what we did. And I think Pimm's should do the same. So they need to really get some...
When you say glassware, that's what the consumer would...
Drink in a pub. Yeah, sorry. So you give this glassware effectively free to bars and restaurants, has your brand name on it. They then, it's the stuff which gets stolen, like a Guinness cup, or a Tarquins gin and tonic glass. They drink it out of your perfect glassware, and then hopefully they take a photo of it, they pop it on Instagram, and you get that bit of virality through it as well. Or, it happened to me. The first time I saw someone drink a gin and tonic in a copper glass, this large wine-style glass with loads of ice in it.
Sorry, copper glass isn't made of copper.
No, sorry. I'm saying copper. I'm saying the wrong word. It's like a burgundy glass, basically, really big, oversized wine glass.
It's like a fishbowl. Not a fishbowl you get in Napa, but I know what you mean. I call it a fishbowl. Exactly. You fucking hold it like that.
Yeah, exactly. You hold it like that. It holds, it can hold a pint of liquid. You fill it to the top with ice, get a huge garnish in there.
That changes the way it tastes as well.
Definitely. And it's got a phenomenal sense of occasion. I remember I first saw one before I started up the distillery, and it was Tanqueray, and I saw someone order this clear drink with ice in it in this glass and I was just like, what is that? And they were like, it's a gin and tonic. I was like, a gin and tonic? Obviously I had to have one. My friends ordered one. I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. No wonder people went absolutely crazy for drinking gin and tonic, because it revolutionized the experience, and you suddenly felt comfortable. I'm very happy to pay £10 for a double gin and tonic. This is a drink that I can savor, enjoy. I feel proud to drink, and I think that's it's definitely what Pimm's needs. You got this jug. You got this.
Aperol kind of did it as well with their own glassware,
Aperol have definitely done it, and I think Aperol's success.
Because Aperol is like a standard wine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in a wine glass, and I think I think of Pimm's in the context of Aperol. So Aperol is a digitally rich kind of the photos of Aperol's bright orange. Okay, it works in 21st century. It works in this day and age of social media. It's a social media first brand. It's a bright orange drink. It pops out in every photo you take. It looks good. Photos went on Instagram and TikTok, etc., etc. It is ideal to go viral and share. Okay, so that is part of, definitely, I wouldn't say it's the driver of its success, but it is part of it, and why people are very keen to take photos of it. Pimm's is brown and it's served in a jug. Okay, we can the benefit of Pimm's compared to Aperol is it's served in a jug. You're selling 4 drinks in one go. It's like, that's an absolute winner. You should be able to do huge volumes if you get people wanting to drink it. So I would make a custom jug, and I'm just, get Jay-Z. Again, I'm just throwing stupid ideas out.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Get Jay-Z, not Jay-Z, get Kanye West to design the jug, pay him, whatever, and you've got the coolest jug, and it has to be, as I said, social media first. Whatever you're making for that kind of a brand, you need, it must be photographed. You want to invoke a reaction from your audience, so they have to take a photo and share it and post it on whatever, platform they are, what they're on, and get a bit of virality. And I think the issue, again, it has to compensate with the fact that Pimm's is brown. Pimm's isn't bright orange. It's not pink, like pink gin had the boom again. It matched the color of people's clothes, their dresses, their summery shirts and stuff. I think
it needs to play, the red and the white with the brand. I think it needs to lean in on that somehow, because it evokes the British kind of gentleman and
definitely
and lady
I think having a clear color connection, a visual emotive connection to a brand is really important. As I said, Vertico yellow, Aperol orange, Tarquins blue, but it is really important. And that clear brand recognition really sets some brands ahead of others in terms of recall, and it is that recall which helps you, drives that sale at a bar or in a store. But yeah, Pimm's needs a cool jug. I think fruit helps in the brown drink.
I love Pimm's.
It is delicious.
I wish the sun was out, because I would absolutely smash a Pimm's right now.
But yeah,
then the 3 and 4 were a new Wimbledon sponsorship, and everything
everywhere all at once.
So new Wimbledon sponsorship is just, defensive. They should own Wimbledon. You imagine if Aperol got Wimbledon, it comes down to my benchmark. What would this brand do? Or another one I do is, what would I do if insert biggest competitor's name here, they got it instead? And I do this sometimes with opportunities, sales opportunities. If you get offered something and you know you're going to lose money on it, for example, would I be annoyed if someone else got it? And if I would be annoyed, I'd probably do it. And if I wouldn't, if someone else did it, and I knew they were going to lose X amount of thousands of pounds, I'd be happy to let them. So it's that sense. I wouldn't let Aperol take Wimbledon. And then lastly, everything, everywhere, all at once. It's kind of it's a sales phrase which comes from someone in the industry, almost like a bit of a legend within the spirits industry, and it's his method of launching brands. It's the guy who started Malfi Gin. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's an Italian gin brand, and he's got dozens of brands. He was like responsible for working for different companies, for helping launch Kraken, helping launch Hendrick's Gin when he worked at that company. So he's amazingly sort of a creative marketing genius, and his phrase is everything everywhere all at once.
What's his name?
It's called Elwyn Gladstone.
Elwyn,
yeah.
So, English geezer or?
I think so. He lives in the States. I believe he's English. Yeah. I think he's English American. But yeah, that was his. We haven't got the deep pockets or big budgets of a Diageo or a Pernod Ricard. We can't, persist with a brand for many, 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 many years, waiting for it to work or waiting for that timing to be right. It's kind of try everything in all markets all at once and learn as quickly as you can to see what works where and why, and try and fine tune from there. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You should probably give up and do something different. So it's probably more suitable for challenger brands than it's maybe it's a variation of lots of different things in tech, but it's kind of it's basically, sell PIMs to every country you can, to any retailer, to everywhere, all at once, and see what works, and try and fine tune your marketing or sales approach from there. And equally, if it works, fantastic. If it doesn't work, it's a bit of a disaster.
Say I was to say we've talked a lot about how you've built this with beautifully constrained budgets.
Yeah.
And I think the packvertising, the distribution, density, geography, shackling the geography, building these diehard fans, focusing on the product, all these things. Say I was to give you unlimited dough, right? Mm-hmm. And you could get the Tarquins. What event would you say you're going to spend $3 million on a celeb endorsement? What would you do? Say you're going to revamp something. Maybe if you were to create your own pub, for example, or create your own thing, what would you do? What would be your headline? What would be your headline partner if money was no object?
I would go Daniel Craig's my celeb, probably.
Yes.
I think he's a bit of cool. You got James Bond effectively.
Yes.
He's done a lot with Belvedere vodka for Moet Hennessy. So LVMH. He's probably tied up, but he'd probably be my number one for our Tarquins gin. I would realistically would probably just increase our efforts in sales and marketing. That's probably where would look to expand to more countries, really give America a bit more of a push than we are currently, with bigger budgets, deeper pockets, and investing in that sales resource. So literally a team, and then I say marketing resource. I think particularly in this market or cost of living crisis, I think we're probably emerging from recession, but typically brands focus more on the trade marketing stuff, which is like point of sale, which is things like free glassware, advertising at the point of sale, working with your customers, whether that's a supermarket or a pub group, working with them to invest with them on clever ways to drive that conversion for your brand. And that's really where lots of brands like ourselves spend the majority of their money at the moment. And those brand awareness pieces, those nice to haves, they're the things which are getting funneled towards stuff with clear ROI, clear return on investment in theory. If you spend £100, £1,000, £10,000, what you might get out of it is measurable. So I think, investing cleverly still working with trade partners and growing our brand that way is key. And then sampling is really everything. How can you build that deep connection, as you were talking about, with your customer? And it's something, again, that it's easy to analyze in hindsight. It's probably what we've done well with our Tarquins gin over the last decade. It wasn't an overnight success. We had fantastic growth rates for the first 5 years, huge 100% year on year, but it's still from a low base compared to much bigger companies. And so it still feels like this more of an organic journey, winning over customers and accounts one by one and building that community over a decade. As we didn't go from 0 to 10 million in 1 year by any means. And there are brands that do, there are celebrity brands that might go from 0 to 50 million in a year, or the Rocks tequila, or so I think taking that same approach but on a grander scale would be great. And also to invest in our new brands. So we have Twin Fin rum and we've got Connie Glaze vodka. It would be great to turbocharge those a little bit as well with additional resource. But
it's MKJ Ignite are a team of experienced recruiters who specialize in the challenger brand space. They recruit for over 50 brands, ranging from pre-revenue startups right through to some award-winning brands such as Real Superfoods and Purdy and Fig. They recruit across all levels and all functions. So whether you're looking for a new salesperson, a new marketing whiz, or an ops guru, MKJ Ignite have got you covered. They're bloody good at what they do, trust me. So if you're looking to hire or you're looking for a new role, get in touch with MKJ Ignite. They won't let you down. Are you looking to turbocharge your brand, take it to another level, save money, save energy, save stress, save time? Well, I've got the perfect thing for you. I am delighted to announce that HC Brands, formerly HC Consulting, my boy Harry Clark, has just launched a commercial growth accelerator program designed specifically for challenger food and drink brands. You can upskill your commercial team. They've got so many modules. You can handpick them. We can do the full shebang. You're going to save hours of research. You're going to get the tools to turbocharge your growth, get better clarity on your brand's objectives and directions. And look, Harry's worked with some amazing brands, Holy Moly, Islands, Savile, and Rooted Drinks. He's really helped me with a strategy for Hungary. Yeah, if you're looking to turbocharge your brand, link in the show notes, and you're going to be able to do that easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Understanding how you work. My friend, funnily enough, I don't know if you know him, Dom, has got a brand called Allura.
Oh, yes.
Which is to take on Aperol.
Yeah.
Aperol. And I wrote a piece about it being like why Aperol may have shot themselves in the foot. And I got a lot of flack for it. Basically, I had loads of people being like, oh, you can't say that. And then loads of people unsubscribed from the newsletter.
No.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point is it was kind of meant to be divisive. But, well, not even divisive. I interviewed Tom on the podcast.
Yes.
Dom on the podcast.
Yeah.
And he was giving some really good reasons. So like Allura, Aperol, so they've got those semiotics, so it's quite an easy switch for the customer.
Yes.
Same occasion, but it's an easier pour for the staff, so it's less. I think with Aperol, it's like 3 parts something.
Yeah.
Everyone lambasts me for that. They're like, oh, no one cares.
Yes.
I think the margins, they make more margin. Allura make more margin per thing sold
for the pub.
Yeah. Yeah. But and the Italian, it's kind of like this Italian branding. Kind of imagine limoncello, but like a spritz. Mm-hmm. What would some of the things, knowing what you know and using that as an example, like how would you think they could take on Aperol again? All with limited budgets, that is.
Yeah.
Because I think that could paint a picture and tell a story for lots of other brands.
Mm-hmm. I think that it sounds like that. I think they're taking it from a very commercial, customer focused perspective, which is definitely the right thing to do. So they're in this economic climate, they're providing a commercial reason for the bar or pub to list it. They're providing increased profit margins. Profitability is very key at this, particularly in this climate, which is fantastic. And I think it's a bright yellow drink, right? The spritzes are very much in, so they're bang on trend. People always talk about category data, and it's very important that you're sort of that relates very much to timing. Really, they're at the right time for the spritz. I think taking on Aperol is definitely a tricky one. I think by offering a fantastic alternative in that drinking occasion, which is aperitif spritz, I think they've hit the nail on the head. So I think lemon spritzes are in this summer, and it's got a long way to go. And I think everything is cyclical. Okay, Aperol is in as well, and it's been building for the last decade. And I'm sure it's got another, good decade to run as well, particularly within the UK. But at some point in time, maybe in 20 years, it will be the pip. Who is Aperol looking to is Campari looking to offload Aperol? You might see a news story, and the next down cycle of that brand, when people aren't after an orange spritz, they're after a whiskey. So I don't know, whatever it is. But there are it's a 30-year cycle.
How do you think about that? Because gin's in decline in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about building a timeless family brand, as you said, of a business for your kids to potentially take on, like with surviving those downward turns?
Yeah, so I
know you've got the MPD, but like I'm trying to talk specifically about
the gin.
Yeah.
So I think, like fashion, spirits, and I suppose like economies as well, there's probably 30-year cycles in broader spirits genres or categories, right? So we know whiskey has had a boom years ago, and then it was a massive decline. They were deep mothballing Scotch and Irish whiskey distilleries left, right, and centre. Now it's booming again, and every man and his dog is reopening these mothballed distilleries. And
when you say mothball,
they close them down because there's no demand.
What's a mothball, though?
I'm not sure. I don't know, but they'll just stop. They'll literally stop producing, lock the door for 30 years, and then someone comes along and fires up the stills again. So whiskey's cyclical, gin as well. So Hendrick's launched in 99, 98. So you could argue that was the start of the gin boom, and we've had 25 years of it, and maybe we've still got another really good solid. This is UK I speak of, we still got another 5 years of solid gin sales, but really, a lot of that growth has come from the periphery. Flavoured gin has driven innovation. Gordon's Pink was probably single-handedly responsible for I don't know how many percentage points, but a significant portion of gin growth in the UK over the last decade. And what we're seeing is a contraction of the industry, which is natural. In Cornwall alone, we've gone from one distillery, us, to about 40. And, I don't think that's sustainable for the long term. But so you'll see a contraction and probably a bit of a movement back towards classic dry gins. Our flagship or our lead brand has always been our Tarquins dry gin. Whereas lots of the flavoured gins, so we do a beautiful blood orange gin, a rhubarb and raspberry gin, they're fantastic. But those peripheral drinkers who would drink probably a rhubarb and raspberry gin and tonic, they might be more susceptible to trading over to an Aperol Spritz or to an Allura Spritz if the option is there.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas a classic gin and tonic drinker might only stay with gin and tonic. They are a gin and tonic drinker. So it's that. There's the market who are willing to move and try new things and so it's ultimately I graduated in 2009 from university. I haven't really seen that was probably the bottom of the recession from the global financial crisis. I got my job in 2011 or 2010. So it's kind of, I haven't seen, and a lot of my colleagues have never really seen a recession or a downturn as such, just of the economy. So there's a lot of news and a lot of firsts for everyone. So we've got, we're seeing premium brands, not just gin, premium and super premium brands are finding it tougher in this climate. So it's a mixture of everything that we're facing in terms of as people are tightening their belts a bit. But ultimately, I think we're focusing on our dry gin forever. This is our forever brand. It's our flagship. We sell the most of it. It's the one people love the most, the highest reviews. We probably have 3,000 5-star reviews on Amazon. Yeah. So it's very much about backing that and being consistent with our messaging, really. And ultimately, focusing on core markets, core customers, supporting our customers as well for the long term. But as you mentioned, as a business and a family distillery, it has felt natural. In COVID, we diversified by channel, as we're talking about, sales channel. So we weren't just selling business to business. We've started our direct to consumer channel. We also started opening shops, which you've mentioned as well. So we now have 7 retail shops in Cornwall and Devon as well. So we sell a decent amount to direct to consumer with a full margin. We sell a decent amount to businesses, other wholesale businesses as well. We're now in travel retail and airports as well, which is a fantastic new area of business for us. And we do decent export as well to about 30 countries. So we're diversified in channel. And now, with that cyclical nature of the spirits categories, we've started to diversify by product. So in 2020, we launched our Twin Fin Spiced Rum. We now have a family of flavoured and Caribbean rums as well. And then we launched our new vodka brand last year. So we have gin, rum, vodka, 3 of the biggest spirits categories in England and the world. And what we're doing to focus for the long term is building those secondary brands, which all share the same core DNA of being from the wild coast of Cornwall.
Why didn't you call them so you've called it Connie Glaze, which I think is an amazing name.
Thank you.
I think it's a bit like Johnny Walker, but there's another persona there. Connie Glaze you could do all sorts with.
Yeah.
And as this Twin Fin, why didn't you put them under the Tarquins brand? Because a lot of people would say, and again, I like the whole reason I do this podcast because there's lots of nuance in everything. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people say stick it under one brand. Mm-hmm. I suppose, why did you do that first? And then second, why... the Connie Glaze? I'd love to learn about that.
Yeah, so there's 2 arguments for both.
Yeah.
Name everything under the same brand, name them under different brands. I suppose the argument for naming them under the same brand is that you're building the brand equity. You can really leverage that Tarquins into new categories, and it's a lot easier, it's cheaper, and you can go that route for sure. But my view was that we're ideally trying to target slightly different drinkers to our gin drinker. With rum and our flavoured rums in particular, we're arguably going after a slightly younger drinker. So slightly different target market. And again, with the vodka, we want it to be a little bit broader in terms of target market and as well. So we've tailored each brand to target a slightly different target market to diversify the breadth of our audience as well. So we're not just hyper-focused into a gin drinker, as we've got new generations coming through as we're trying to build this. We're trying to be a sustainable long-term brand. And I think as a 100% family-owned company with no investors and no pressure for an exit or we don't have any other objective other than to build make the world's best tasting products and build, be the best place to work as we can be and support the local marine and human environment on the wild coast of Cornwall. But I think we have been able to, also ultimately you can probably get more, I don't know, maybe this is a more cynical one, you can probably have more listings in the same retailer as well. That wasn't the reason why we did it, but you can pop into a local retailer and they stock Tarquins, Twin Fin and Connie Glaze, and they might have 3 SKUs of each. Suddenly you've got 9 SKUs on a retailer's shelf. When if they were all Tarquins, they might be like, no, mate, I've got 5.
Yeah, and also in terms of keeping the cost down, you got one marketing team across 3 brands. Really and true,
yeah, it actually is. It is more expensive. There's definitely much higher startup costs. So I think we do things slightly more expensively than we used to. You can't get a branding agency to do it for a couple grand and boost their portfolio. So startup costs for each brand, content creation. Then you get how many social media accounts you have and email accounts and websites and you add complexity to the business.
Do you want, say I'm a man walks into a bar, and I see what's in front of me. So you got the Tarquins, the Twin Fin, the Connie Glaze.
Yes.
Do you ideally want me as the consumer to think they're 3 separate brands, or do you want them to think, they're linked to Tarquins, or do you not give a fuck?
It is a good question. I think we would probably like I don't think ultimately it probably doesn't matter. The essence is our ideal consumer, our ideal drinker for each brand is a little bit different for each one, right?
Sure.
So that's probably our main purpose. I think it would make our life easier for sure if they did know they were from Tarquins, in terms of when launching a new brand. And we do mention, Connie Glaze on Tarquins channels occasionally and Twin Fin, but we have, you don't necessarily get as much crossover as you might think, which only sort of reaffirms the view that they are for different drinkers, that your gin drinker doesn't necessarily want to drink a spiced rum and coke, and your gin drinker doesn't necessarily want to drink a vodka martini, they want a gin martini. And so that being in those distinct brands has its benefits. So the really are, people do tell me you should do them all under the same. And, I'd try and look at case studies and examples of brands that have done that. And, there are definite pros and cons.
I asked Ben Branson this, who's actually been on the podcast twice. He's actually 3 times actually. He's interviewed me. I'm doing a supper club with him next week. But I asked him with C-Lip, what does nature mean to him in one sentence?
Yes. I'd
love to know what the sea means to you in one sentence, or the ocean if you're American.
Yeah. What does the sea mean to me in one sentence?
And how it filters into your brand.
For me, I think the sea, ultimately, the sea for us to me, it's inspiring. It's probably the best word to capture all of my feelings towards it, because obviously, on a personal level, from swimming, surfing, just being in the sea, and then being near the sea and looking at it, and looking out into the distance and being around it. I think those have those very similar feelings. But when it can also translate to other areas of one's life, and also obviously naturally into business as well, because we say that our brands, or as a company, we're very much inspired by the sea. In terms of our actual company mission, if I'm to sort of break it down, is to bring a slice of Cornish sunshine to the world, and we do that using our family of award-winning spirits as the talking point or the drinking vessel. But also in terms of what we do, our mission is to support the human, the natural, and the marine environment that surrounds us on the beautiful coast of North Cornwall. So I think the sea is a tricky one. I never feel happier than when I'm by the sea, and I think many people feel similarly. And what we try to do that is capture it and bottle it, and pop it into the DNA of all of our brands. I think that's what I'm looking to do, and bring that joy, and that slice of Cornish sunshine very much translates. It captures that as well. It's all in the mix, but it's a difficult question. I possibly haven't answered it well.
No, you have.
It's inspiring.
It is, yeah. Well, the reason I ask is I did a walk. Unfortunately, the weather since I've been here has been torrential rain, but the Sunday I had the afternoon, and I took a walk along from Padstow along the path before I stuffed my face at Rick Stein's. But I was thinking that I was like, gee, like the sea can have such a. So you're not the only brand that has the sea kind of inextricably, and it's, when you say the sea, the coast, the same kind of. We're talking about the same thing. But I did what I think you get with on those at the tops of Cornwall versus anywhere else in the world is that one, feeling of magnetism, and two, the feeling of like how small and actually insignificant things are. I think it's a beautifully kind of this what you're worried about with this podcast or this gin is ultimately kind of nothing in the grand scheme of things. And then also I think when I was up there, I was like you really notice it in Cornwall because of the cliffs and the jaggedness of the cliffs. The crashing of the waves really kind of signals to me is like how much everything is just in constant change. I think I listened to a podcast where it's like it's in a book from Will Storr, a guy I interviewed the other week, wrote a book called The Status Game and Selfie, really interesting guy. And he was saying that humans crave stability in a world of change. Yes. And I think the sea reminds you that everything's constantly changing. The trends are changing. And it's like, how do you have that kind of timelessness. What have been some of the hardest changes for you personally within all this? Because I believe the brand is what you're creating for the consumer to enjoy and make a business out of it. Yeah, absolutely. But I also believe there is a kind of a deeper self, a learning of self on that journey. Like, what are some of the things? How's Tarquin changed from? We'll wrap this up shortly. From going to the Gurnard's Head back in 2013.
My older and wiser. I think. Ultimately, I started the company. I think I mentioned it at the beginning. The idea on paper when I was in London, which sounded like the dream, and I'm probably living it. Well, I'm living it. Was to move to the sea, to go surfing in the morning, and make a few bottles of gin in the afternoon. That was kind of the dream on paper. I mean, I went surfing every day when I was writing the business plan. As soon as I made that first bottle, my surfing, I barely hadn't been surfing, a handful of times on the first year. Eventually, I got to do some surf trips abroad when I started going on holiday. But, my surfing went downhill and my gin went uphill. But also, the second reason was to be my own boss. I just love the idea of working for myself, and it's not necessarily that I'm bad working for other people. I think I'm pretty good. I was always, very studious at school, very happy to take instruction and work to deadlines, but having that ultimate creativity and being in charge of your own destiny and it's not a perfect model of what you put in, you get out, because it doesn't work like that. There's an extraordinary amount of luck which goes into a business. Like, if I started another business tomorrow, it probably wouldn't be successful. But it's kind of being able to work for myself in an industry which is amazing. Working in booze, the people are fantastic. Have fantastic friends from working in this industry. No one takes themselves too seriously. You're looking to bring joy into people's lives and to work in that kind of, a day in the office is literally doing a tasting in a bar or coming up with a cocktail recipe. Or for me, coming up with a new recipe of gin or rum or vodka, which is, in that sense, to me, I've got the world's best job. To make a living doing it with a company based in Cornwall, which is the most beautiful part in the world, where, it's quite hard to find, it's hard. Similar jobs don't really exist, so I've sort of created my own and made a living while doing it. So it's kind of it feels like a bit of a dream. I think to execute that plan on paper and exceed it even. You start off with a 5-year plan, get to the end of the 5-year plan, you're like, what now? What next? Okay, I've got to do another 5-year plan. Another 5-year plan, and then got to year 10. It's like, okay, what next? And it's like, now you might look at a 10-year plan. Now we're into the second decade of business, and it's just, it's a never-changing journey. I think I'm now a father. I have two young boys, 2 toddlers, and I'm more mature, maybe more risk-averse, maybe a little bit different to how I started out, but definitely the same person. I still like taking risks. I love making new brands, which is also driven probably the reason why I didn't call them all Tarquins. The idea of creating a new custom bottle and brand and package and identity I enjoy. So really, and also just really learned about my own strengths and weaknesses. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not so good at. And
what are the weaknesses you're trying to work on now?
I'm probably not the world's most organized person. So that's a bit of a weakness. I love talking about my brand and selling it, but it's not something that I would be best at doing every single day of my career. I don't know. I'm kind of, I probably wouldn't suit doing an accountancy role, for example, full time and spending my whole life in an Excel sheet. I like it, but it's not what I'm best at. So, maybe I'm a jack of all trades, and I like to sort of dive into each area of each function of a business a little bit and have a deep understanding of it. But I don't know. I still love to solve problems. I think that's maybe one of my strengths. And
what's your favorite problem you've ever solved?
I'm not sure. It's a difficult one, actually. Now I'm like, I can't think of any. I think it's not really a problem. I think we did do, reverting back to COVID. I thought that was a hugely successful result of coming out stronger than going into it. I think, I feel really lucky that we're here today as a result of making some of the good, correct, in hindsight, decisions. But usually it's just a series of lots of small problems, and it's just lots of small. People talk about continuous improvement. It's just trying to tackle the small ones and make that right. Every decision is like a fork on the road. You can do one thing or you can do the other, and hopefully you make, on average, more correct decisions than incorrect ones, and end up in the right spot. But yeah, a lot of it's on intuition, I suppose.
Yeah, it's the little things that always add up. What's one thing you've changed in the last 5 years that you staunchly believe that you've changed your mind on?
I change our mind on everything, really. Anything
Same.
which is new, which comes out, I feel like I'm guilty of it as much as the next person. Non-alcoholic spirits, they might come out and be like, oh, I'm not sure anyone's going to drink it. And then it's a category on every menu. And like, okay, maybe I'll make a non-alcoholic, we haven't made a non-alcoholic spirit yet, but it's something we're considering. I remember when people were first making fruit gins or pink gins, we're like, oh, we're not going to do that. And then of course you do it. So I'm probably anything, I think I've become more open perhaps over, I don't necessarily take a stronger decision on new ideas as I used to be, or, I know that, it doesn't, I know that no one knows what's really going to be right. So maybe, I'm more open to crazy ideas that other people are doing, or, I'm not going to dismiss something that another brand is doing and think that it's wrong, because it, I think it's more often than not, it turns out to be a stroke of genius. So, I don't know. I think it's probably not a good answer either. But
I think it's one of the things you've said is I think, I don't know why, but in that we kind of punish people for changing their mind.
Yeah,
but I actually think it can be a superpower to in terms of, I suppose, linking to this seed, right? This constant changing of everything. Like the business world is constantly changing. Like gin won't be in vogue at some point. Rum will be. Yeah. Meta won't be in vogue at some point. But so the ability to constantly kind of change, like the sea, with what's what's coming your way is a superpower. So I think what you've said there about, look, fuck it, maybe we won't do strawberry gin. Sorry, not strawberry gin. Was it strawberry
gin?
Yeah,
pink gin. We do a strawberry gin now. But
what is pink gin? Strawberry gin.
Pink. So pink isn't. There's whole marketing campaigns talking pink is not a flavour. Pink, it can be anything. People. Is
it just a colour?
Literally, technically, it's just a colour. Gordon's pink. It might have taste of strawberries or anything. But no, I think pink. It's complicated in gin. Rhubarb gin was probably the first pink gin, but it wasn't called pink. And then people used the term pink, and that's what people.
That was so. When we were talking, that's one thing I was meaning to ask you about linking the long form copy that worked really well for you. One thing I've never understood, I loved your take on it, is the Jack Daniels tube adverts, which are really fucking long. I don't think I've ever read one. What would you say? Why do you think that works or doesn't? It clearly works. They do it.
Oh, does it work?
Well, I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. Like,
I'm not sure. I feel like I might have seen one. What is it?
So the Jack Daniels adverts on the train, on the tube.
Is this on the seat or on the platform?
On the platform.
On the platform, yeah.
It's like it's almost like a newspaper, and it's like written with the short chody
I see.
paragraphs.
Yeah. I think
I don't know.
I feel like it rings a bell that I've read one.
But I'm just trying to think, why is a big brand? You don't see any other brand doing that in the Diageo kind of catalogue, or maybe catalogue is the wrong way of saying it, but and I was just thinking, when you were saying, out of everything that's really converting on the D2C side, it's this long form copy. But I was wondering if you had anything to say on that, because
I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure it necessarily does work, and it's impossible to measure. I think that's the beautiful thing about above the line campaigns. It's like you don't know unless you've got a QR code or a call to action or a discount code like you see. You can't measure it. So there's a lot of a lot of above the line marketing can be vanity marketing as well, or
vanity marketing.
Vanity in the sense that people want to see their brand on the tube, because they take the tube, or they want, I think there's a great example is billboards in LA. I don't know if you've been to LA, but you walk around, you drive around the city, there's these huge billboards, must cost millions of dollars, right? And they're advertising movies or like new TV releases. And where are their head offices? They're in LA. And, you'll get a marketing manager who'll put, I don't know, it's a bad example. They'll put Batman, billboard pretty much outside their office. So their CEO drives past the Batman movie and they know that they're doing a great campaign for the new, great marketing campaign. Has it got any ROI? Probably not. It's like there's a fixed finite number of people in LA itself. Does it need to be on a billboard? Probably not. Should they have spent money somewhere else digitally or capturing the worldwide global audience to watch Batman? Maybe they should have done. But it's kind of, I think it's always a bit of vanity, but I think people do it well when, they Photoshop a billboard or they get one billboard somewhere cheap, they take a photo of it and then they digitize it and they use
Dash did it fucking well.
Yeah.
With the wonky vegetable thing, and they had the kind of phallic looking
on the tube
but then I spoke to Jack and he's a legend and they just piled in on it, went really kind of, they had, that's the darling example where they had the kind of the big corporate conglomerate of ATL campaign with the kind of rambunctious hustle of a challenger brand, because all the marketing were all over it. They went onto socials, they really just maximized the hell out of that. Final thing, mate, just out of curiosity, because I think surfing, and we won't go too much into this, but Perry's a big surfer, has got a place in Cornwall.
Yes.
What are some of the lessons you took from surfing that you applied to running a challenger brand? Like, what are some of the parallels?
I'm not sure there are that. I mean, surfing's frustrating and competitive. I think that's probably the most,
It's competitive. I thought it was quite a chiller, like, yo, dude. Or is that, did you surf professionally?
I mean, if you're the best, it's, in the lineup, sure, it's probably quite relaxed. But no, you're competing for the waves, right? There's a finite number of waves coming in. If there's one wave,
it's a bit like shelf space.
But literally 3 waves come every 5 minutes, or it's 3 waves every 3 minutes. Well, there's 10 guys in the water. 3 of those 10 get the waves. They paddle back out by the time the next 3 waves are in. So there's there's a pecking order, but ultimately the best surfers get the waves. So you've got to compete. You're the challenger brand in that sense. Fighting for your spot, hoping they miss one. They drop the ball and then you can catch the wave. So in that sense, it is quite similar. I hadn't thought of it in that way. But also it can be frustrating. You can have a bad session. Session is surf session where you might not catch any waves. You paddle out. You just, you get hit by all these waves and, you end up paddling in with your tail between your legs and had an absolute awful time. But, you get back up, dust yourself off and go back out again. So it can be incredibly frustrating, and it is genuinely competitive, competitive to the point where there's local, there's rage, surf rage, where people get in all sorts of fights.
Really? In the water? In the water. Have you ever had that at all? No. I can't imagine, you're quite a polite guy, so I can't imagine you.
Well, you're more likely to get shouted at, if you do the wrong thing, someone might tell you off if they're the locals. So there's sort of pride in the spots. But I wouldn't say I apply too much, but I don't necessarily do it for that. I don't do it for that. I think those are probably the more negative parts of it. But the best part of it is almost the tranquility of it. So you can paddle out. And the chill aspect, as you described, is just like you can forget all of your problems and issues and help remove yourself from any of those stressful ongoing situations, and probably think a little bit more clearly about the bigger picture. And that is that inspiring element of, you can look out to sea, the sun might be rising or setting while you're in the water, or, I think when I was my wife's American from LA, so we often go surfing in LA as well, and there might be dolphins in the water or a sea lion or
sharks.
Or sharks or like a pelican flying by, something just amazing. You're like, wow, this is
Are you one of the short boards, or do you use a longboard?
I use a short board. I should use a longer board, but I think as time's gone on, I'm going to move to a bigger one. Just sort of, they say increase your wave count.
Aren't they?
They're hard, a lot of paddling, and that's the frustrating part. You might be exhausted, tired.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting sport with some good parallels, but it's I think it's something that we do try and capture in. We haven't got a surfboard on the label. We're trying to capture that essence of what it's about and what we do as a brand as well. And it's why we're blue as well. It is all about the sea. But it's a good question.
Yeah. What Perry said is he talked about the slipstream.
Oh yeah.
So he was saying that he was in maybe Cornwall, and he was paddling out, and this old boy was on the beach saying, if you just went that way, and the slipstream would pull you out.
Oh, the rip current. Yeah.
And he was basically saying in business you can try and paddle against the hard thing, and actually if you just follow either what you're really good at as a brand, so that's your hero skew, for example, you're not trying to get distracted with loads of other fucking bollocks. Focus on that, and that will pull you forward. With kind of leadership, like get out of your own way, like focus on things you're good at, offload everything else. I'm gonna ask it to Jack tomorrow about the parallels between surfing. I actually think leaning into your fears is another one.
Yes,
getting back up, as we've talked about. Where's the best place? Because I might go. Is there anywhere decent around here? I'm not gonna jump on a fucking board, but like, where's good to watch? Do you think around here?
I think for a watch and a drink, Fistral Beach is pretty cool. So
is that the best place to watch it?
I think that it's often argued to be Cornwall's best or its most famous surf spot where they have all the competitions. But there is just I think I might have mentioned it. The Stable Restaurant does pizzas and ciders. Does these tasting boards of West Country ciders. You can try like on one of those like surf boards or skateboards with holes in it. You can try 4 ciders, have a sourdough pizza, and it's got like the best 270-degree view of the beach and loads of surfers. So that's one of the best spots in Cornwall. Yeah, awesome.
Mate, let's wrap that up there. I've absolutely loved that. It's so good to just, as I said, I've admired what you've been doing from afar for many years. Well, as I said before even COVID, which was coming up to 5 years ago now. Sorry, it must have been 5 years ago. I think this whole constraint thing, how to sweat your marketing budget or just your budget in general, is glorious and will help so many listeners. I think. The way you've moved into these other brands and kind of the passion project behind it, but also the kind of just the hard kind of commercial reasons to do it and to survive that change, as we talked about, kind of with the sea, the stability of, we all crave stability and change. And I think with these brands, you're gonna do that and be able to pass it on to your boys someday. So mate. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
I love doing it in this rustic vibe.
This is the old operations office, by the way. I mean, this used to be my desk, but it's very much, it's the working distillery office. Yeah, cool. But thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute delight, amazing to get you down to Cornwall and experience the good Cornish weather. And I'm not sure if the sun might be coming out. And
just in time for me to get down to Fistral Beach, mate. Wicked.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate that.
Cheers.